God, I've got to fix that. I just got to remember. 1 second. Filters. There we go. That's better. Fix the opacity on the chat. That way you guys can see everything. Alrighty. 07, everyone. Welcome back to episode 103 of the Pathfinders podcast. I am Trio311, your host and producer of the podcast. And here on the Pathfinders podcast, we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and their development. So, this evening, we don't have it's not a big development news show, but we're gonna check in on the latest Roadmap Roundup, which is real light because the first additions to 4.9 are coming with the next Roadmap Roundup. What Niku had said is he didn't want the additions to 4.9 to be a distraction from DefenseCon, which to me is just them saying that we're not sure what we're going to add yet. Dangerobo says, went to issue council for a mining issue, and Cutlet, of all people, started the issue report. I've never seen him mine. Interesting. Yeah, maybe he's getting into it now that crafting's in. I don't know. So we'll check out the May 20th Roadmap Roundup. There's also a Q&A for all things Alpha 4.8 that I think, like, nobody's talking about. I think the majority of the community slept on it like they do most comlinks. So we're going to check out the Q&A and see what the answers are that they have. And we're going to, there's one thing in particular that I wanted to bring up, but we're going to read through it together. And I want to hear your thoughts. I'll give you my thoughts and everything. Yeah, everyone has to mine now. Somebody's got to mine for me. I'm probably not going to do it. You know, that is just not my bag. I'll do it a little bit here and there, you know, alongside other people, but it's just really not my gameplay. Hey, SC Timble 07, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you're doing well. And after we get through the Q&A for Alpha 4.8, we're going to take a look at the statements that were made in the recent SCL by Torsten and Jared regarding teleportation in Star Citizen. And people for the last week plus have been absolutely panicking regarding this. And it's like, all you heard teleportation in Star Citizen, you know, teleportation, fast travel, whatever you want to call it. They talked about teleportation, teleport to party leader, and everybody's just up in their arms and panicking about it and completely forgetting the very important context that it was discussed in and the very specific verbiage that was used. And so we're going to go over that, listen to it in detail, put our thinking caps on, do a little bit of critical thinking, and look at a few things regarding that about how CIG can actually make that happen within the Star Citizen universe and make it fit within the Star Citizen universe, because that was like a big part of what was said. You know, and we can't, you know, forget about the words that were said and the context that they were said in. You can't zero in on one thing and then just not think about everything else that was said. That is the opposite of critical thinking and critical appraisal of information. So we're going to do that tonight. So yeah, it might be, we'll see how fast this goes. It might be a little bit of a shorter show. Also want to remind everyone, if you haven't been catching my streams lately, I've been trying to stream regularly, usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Oh shit, already getting rated. Nebulous Taco. Hey, 07. Bumblisimo. Taco Raid. I love tacos. I love all the tacos. Hold on, let me get you a shout out. Give me 1 sec. Shout out at Nebulous Taco. Moobot right on time. Taco Raid, Taco Raid. So Nebulous, you were playing some Star Citizen, is what it says. What were you up to this evening? How was your stream? Really appreciate the raid. Thanks so much for the support. And for those of you who are just arriving from Nebulous Taco's stream and their community, thank you for joining me. This is episode 103. We're just getting started of the Pathfinders podcast, where we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen and Squadron 42 and its development. Oh, Juan Bellissimo gave you the recommendation. Hey, thanks so much, Juan Bellissimo. Really appreciate it. Thanks for showing some support and bringing a Nebulous Taco and the community on over. I hope you'll stick around and hang out for the stream. It should be pretty informative. North End Trooper, hey, what's going on, buddy? I was just saying, given the rundown of what we're going to be talking about this evening, the May 20th Roadmap Roundup, the Alpha 4.8 Q&A, as well as talking about teleportation in Star Citizen and the recent comments that Jared and Torsten made. Nebulous Taco, you were running some Headhunter rep with a couple of org buddies. Awesome. Hey, thanks for the follow. Really appreciate it.
Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Yeah, it's when you get a bunch of people in your stream coming and hanging out and chatting, it's a really good feeling. It's really nice to be a part of a community and get to hang out, digitally with people and enjoy something that everybody enjoy something together. Something that we have in common. Running a Headhunter rep. Are you grinding the Headhunter rep for like any like blueprints in particular or specifically? Do you have a goal with the Headhunter rep? I've been grinding intersect rep, grouping up with people from my Discord as often as possible to try and grind that up because I want to set up a tactical strike groups event and try that out. But also been having a lot of fun testing out all the RR&R stuff for carriers and doing carrier ops and seeing what works, what doesn't, what CIG needs to fix and improve on. But yeah, so we'll be talking a little bit about teleportation. We'll listen to what Jared and Torsten said because the context is key, and then we're going to take a look at a few things from Star Citizen's development past regarding what their thoughts are on similar mechanics. Oh shit! Got to support a fellow vet. Awesome. Hey, Apples and Anarchy 07. Um, uh, but I'm going to get comfy when I'm back. I'm trying to get the AD 4 and 5 blueprints for my M80. Oh, nice. Yeah, that'll be sick. The M80 is a pretty slick looking ship. Origin isn't usually my vibe, but the silhouette for that is just, um, oh man, I got to think of a good adjective. It's really slick. I know a lot of people have been commenting about like, it looks like it should be stealth. And I really hope that with Maelstrom and the material sim, that they can use that to affect ship's stealthiness dynamically. The M80 is stimulating. Oh my. Because if they can say that, hey, it's made with these materials, and these materials or this combination of materials absorbs as radar absorbing, and so it has a less of a radar return. I think that along with messing with your components and stuff and your engineering and everything lets you have a lot more interesting aspects to stealth rather than just the components and engineering. Jacob says, my son had a bumped head and I need to check on him every 2 hours. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. How old's Junior? But then like if say your M80 takes a whole bunch of hull damage or something, and you repair it with, like standard material, not what it's made out of. You cheap out, or it's just not available. Or, well, that makes your radar return signature go up. And so it incentivizes you to, repair using the expensive stuff, what it's made out of to maintain that. But that's a logistical challenge, and it costs money, and you have to, that's another choice that you have to make. Maybe it determines where you go to get repaired. It determines, what choices you make in combat. You're like, oh man, I really, if I start to, get shields down, I'm gonna be a little bit more cautious because I'm short on cash right now and I can't afford a big expensive repair. My play style, it heavily revolves around stealth. Those sorts of things are really important factors to include in gameplay. Not just for stealth, but for other things in order to really give a lot of meaningful decision making to the game, which makes the game more engaging. 4 years old, head injury, so bled far worse than it was. You know how it is. Freaking. Oh yeah, yep. I have ran that call hundreds of times. Yeah, I've got my oldest is not quite 4.5, and my twins will be 2 in a few weeks. Yeah, and so I feel you on the bumps and the scrapes and the bruises and stuff, but I will keep my fingers crossed for Junior, and hope everything is just fine. As long as they're
Part of the
acting
crew.
normal and
Part of the ship.
behaving
Part of the
accordingly,
crew. Part of the ship.
that's all
Part
we
of
got
the
to worry
crew.
about.
Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Hey, thanks for the follow, Apples and Anarchy. So yeah, let's go ahead. Oh, before I continue and we get started in the podcast, just to let everybody know who's new to the channel, I am a vet. I'm a former infantry marine, current Army National Guardsman. I've got 2 combat deployments to Iraq from the early 2000s and a 2019-2020 deployment to Afghanistan under my belt. Um, and so I'm always streaming for charity. You can see the stuff down the bottom for Stack Up. I believe in their mission. They work to connect veterans and members of the military with, if you ain't crashing, you ain't racing. Yeah, they work to connect members of the military and veterans with video games and gaming communities like this one, in order to combat the effects of PTSD, being forward deployed, stationed overseas, away from your friends and family and support groups. So I'm a big supporter of what they do. I fundraise for them every year, and trying this year to get back in the swing of things. It's been a little bit slow last couple of years with the kids, but the first second year I did it, we raised like $2,000. So I'm a big supporter of what they do. So if you put !charity in chat, you'll get the link to my Tiltify if you wanted to make a direct donation. And if you put !stack up in chat, you can get a link to their stuff and their Discord to find out more about them and their mission. I highly encourage you to do so. But just to let you guys know, that's why that's down there on the bottom. That's why I'm wearing the t-shirt. But yeah. Oh, yeah. So this week I streamed Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to try and stick to that schedule as much as possible. Whenever I'm streaming, I post an event in my Discord about what I'm going to be doing. So if you're not in my Discord, oh gosh, I keep forgetting to put that in there for the bot. I'm going to remember one of these days. But Northern Trooper is one of my mods. He can get you the Discord link, or I can drop it in chat. The Discord is always open. Lots of very well-informed people about Star Citizen there. A lot of very friendly people. We talk about all sorts of nerd things, not just Star Citizen. So stop on by, and if you want to group up with me, that's where we do it. All right, let's go ahead. Oh yeah, but this week we were streaming. We got grouped together 3 days this week. We had 3 people, 5 people, 7 people, and we were all grinding intersect rep and doing carrier ops off the hangar deck of my Idris. So it's been a lot of fun to test that out, and play around with it, do a little bit of light RP with it. Playing more how the game is eventually maybe going to be intended versus how the game works now, and not min-maxing, doing it more to have fun and just to try out the different things. But it's been really good. So let's go ahead and, pardon me. Hey, SC Hollers 07, buddy, how you doing? Good old Saxo Blind. If you guys haven't checked out SC Hollers, streams on Twitch, but also puts out good vids for the industry folks in particular on YouTube. So go ahead and check them out. But yeah, let's go ahead and switch screens and we'll get to the Roadmap Roundup. Alrighty, so this will be, this one's going to be brief, but it's always, it did not get the RP. Well, RP, not so much in like role playing, but RP in that like, hey, we're going to fly off the deck of the ship and we're not just going to cheese it and bring the Idris in to take out a bunch of fighters. We're going to use the fighters and bombers to take out the targets. We'll come back to the ship and repair. We'll be traversing the system in the Idris. We try to do the logistics gameplay of it that goes along with it. Building up to that and testing out all those systems. Play with rules rather than role play. Exactly. Yeah. As I build out the stuff for the org that I'm founding and building, it'll get a little bit more RP. Yeah, I was wearing. Well, that's the only flight suit I have besides the Twitch drop one. But I love that one that we got from. Was that CitizenCon 2953 or 54? The UE looking one, super cool. Anyway, all right, Roadmap Roundup. Hello, everyone. Every 2 weeks, we accompany the Roadmap update with a brief explanatory note to give you insight into the decision making that led to any changes. This is part of an effort to make our communications more transparent, more specific, and more insightful for all of you who helped to make Star Citizen and Squadron 42 possible. Just a reminder, the 1.0 column showcases features and content planned for inclusion in or before Star Citizen 1.0. This means you may not have to wait for the 1.0 release to experience them. As features content in the 1.0 column become ready, they will migrate left into a point patch column for release. Be sure to check back every 2 weeks for the latest updates. With that, let's dive into this week's Roadmap Roundup CIG community team. Northern Troop, I'm pretty sure it's the one that we went to in LA in 2023. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, yeah, maybe it was the 2954 because that one was themed on the UE and the Bengal and stuff. I think you're right now. Yep, hold on. I got a cough. Okay, so this is a very brief roadmap roundup. Because if you remember in the previous roadmap roundup, if you went to the comlink, which we'll take a look at, or sorry, the Spectrum post, they always do the same thing, but in a Spectrum post where people can ask questions and provide feedback, and the community team will answer and stuff. So there's always a lot of good context in there. If you only check this out, or if you only go to the release view, you're missing out. Always check out the link to the Spectrum post because that's where they will answer questions, and there's usually good things to check out in there. They're pretty consistent about that. And if you don't religiously follow your bot in your Discord that scrubs for any dev posts, you'll miss out. So notable changes for May 20th, 2026. Release view alpha 4.8. So pretty much everything has been committed, or been set to release. We're not going to read through all these things. But then they also added space combat missions, defend locations set to committed. So if we go to the roadmap, has it been that long? Surprise, we're old. Yeah. Yeah, no joke. Yeah, that's crazy that it's been 2.5 years since we had there was Austin, there was five of us or six. How many of us from our Boise Bar Citizen group went? We had a pretty good contingent. It was a lot of fun getting to hang out with a good number of people. Yeah, six of us, which is like half of the active people that come to our Bar Citizens events, which we're having our next quarterly one tomorrow afternoon. Very excited, can't wait. So everything for Alpha 4.8 has been set to release except for the space combat missions defend location. So you can see these locations. You can go to them for certain missions, and you'll see all the little infrastructure stuff. We'll read about those. So adding missions where players are now defending a location from NPC attackers. This includes a standalone mission and a compounding one where players will have multiple conflicting priorities to complete. Yeah, Northern Trooper is doing a giveaway. We're giving away an MTC. More PDCs, more better. But yeah, so you can go to these locations for like the intersect missions. Some of them will take you to these locations. But I imagine these will pop up in 4.8.1 along with maybe some other content. Let's see, 4.8.1. They haven't said when it's going to be, but since middle of next week is the end of early middle of next week is the end of DefenseCon, I would imagine the following Wednesday, the 3rd, will be about when we see 4.8.1, give or take. Okay. And I think they'll probably add these missions. I think that's the Alien Week. That'll be the Alien Week patch, or maybe that'll be 4.8.2. Maybe see some additional content. We'll see. And hopefully a whole lot of fixes. But man, does 4.8 have some problems. It's I mean, I've been playing it a lot, but you've been having to get creative to work around things and be patient with it, and there's just a lot of little just silly things that are really annoying. So yeah, that's the space combat missions defend location. This is set to committed. I'm assuming that'll be 4.8.1. But let's check out the Spectrum post. So again, same information in the Spectrum post. And this one only has one reply. Pardon me, I'm on my second cocktail, so I got a little bit of a hiccup. Hey, John Chavez and on the YouTube chat, 07, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. So we're keeping this week's Roadmap Roundup light as we ramp up 4.9 internally. We're aiming to share the first few cards of the for the next major update in 2 weeks if all goes well. So it was the 20th, so not next Wednesday, but the following Wednesday is when we should probably see 4.9, the first few cards, if all goes well. Plus, I would expect maybe one or two other things for 4.8.1 in terms of maybe vehicles or like personal armor suits, that sort of thing. In the meantime, thank you for your recent reports here on Spectrum and on the Issue Council. The teams are working hard on fixes, and we're planning to release an update shortly. We'll let you know as soon as we have more information to share. We also just rolled out a few additional hotfixes, which you can review in our hotfix thread. That's a good thing to check out. I'm not going to do it right now, but that's where they told us about the ability to claim ship items that are not part of the default loadout. So the main example being paints. I need to check it out and see what things I can claim, because of course this came out on hotfix the day, literally like not even 24 hours after I used parts of my T kit and my K kit on the Idris, and they got borked, and so I had to I melted them. They got borked on Monday, and so I melted them on Tuesday, I think it was, and then used buyback tokens to rebuy them, only for this to come out on Wednesday and essentially tell me, oh, you didn't have to do that. Not that I, really have much need for buyback tokens, but I was like, dang it. Of course, yeah, 2 whole buybacks just to get those back for it to be an in-game feature less than 24 hours later. But I don't have anything I'm buying back, anytime soon. The Kraken is the only thing in my buybacks I'm really all that interested in, and we'll see. I'm a big fan of the Ironclads, despite their, I can see the potential through all the bugs and issues they've been having. And I had melted my Kraken in order to get one of each Ironclad, because I already have an Idris. And so I was like, well, what do I need an Idris and an Ironclad for based off of how I do gameplay? What sort of things I do. So we'll see. It also will just depend on, how much money the kids are sucking out of me at that point. Playing Helldivers 2 while listening. Nice. God, I love Helldivers. I played the first one just obsessively for a long time, and then just constantly, would always get sucked back in because it's just so much fun. I still, occasionally play Helldivers 2, but I've been, I was binging, oh God, Windrose for a couple weeks. Mac and cheese this year, kids. Oh man, my kids would be thrilled. They are cheeseaholics. Dad, I need an F-350 to impress the chicks. Nope, Honda Civic for you, buddy, and you're paying for it yourself. I turned 16 in 2000, and I drove a 1983 Nissan King Cab 4x4 pickup with almost 200,000 miles on it. So, yeah.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Hey, Raptor Man, thanks so much for the follow. Really
Part of the crew, part of the
Steady,
ship.
man.
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
An 87 Cadillac Cimarron. I can't even picture that. Um, but yeah, so I'm not going to sugarcoat 4.8 at all because I've been playing it a lot and I know how much trouble it's having and how much, CIG, to be fair, screwed the pooch on the launch of it and everything. The issues with the mission system, just absolutely going to shit with record concurrency for DefenseCon / Invictus Launch Week without the free fly even starting yet is insane. I would love to see, I'm with Space Tomato. I would kill to see those numbers. I actually was talking to him about it because I want him to do a concurrency, like player metrics tracking sheet like he does for the ship tracking sheet, because you can go back through the years of the um, letter from the chairman and sort of track based off of things that they do give us to sort of get an idea of what they're talking about. 2000, I was 20 and back from my first tour. Sucks to be old. Yeah, you're even older than me. I bet your knees click and pop a whole lot. I had a $500 sedan DeVille, great car, but a 6-liter was hard on a teen's gas card. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, the 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 Nissan King Cab, was a four banger with a 5-speed, and it wasn't like great mileage, but like on the highway, I still got 20 something miles to the gallon easy. And especially where I lived, like you just put it in neutral and go down the mountain a lot. 89 Isuzu Trooper. I could hop the front tires off the ground because of the clutch and torque it. Oh my gosh. Um, but yeah, the silver lining, the light at the end of the tunnel is that we know that we're getting a 4.8.1, a 4.8.2, and a 4.8.3. With little content drops and additional ships and stuff like that, and but no new features, between now and July, some point in July, whenever 4.9 launches. And we don't know how big of a patch 4.9 will be, but based off of what Jared was saying in the last ISC at the end of it, it's the the whole numbered patches, 4.9, 4.10, 4.11 should be pretty interesting for the rest of the year. We're looking at a lot of great content, but also important features. But having those point patches in between, along with hot fixes and stuff, gives CIG ample opportunity to put in important fixes, important stability work on the back end and on the client side, performance improvements. It gives them a lot of opportunity to iterate that they wouldn't have if they weren't doing that. Like back when we would just get a patch every quarter, and like that's basically what you got, until the next quarterly patch. So that cadence, is less accelerated than last year in order to get them, allow them to get features in and test them more. But having point patches in between to deliver more content allows them to also do updates to the game and to the client that they wouldn't be able to do without actually delivering a patch update. So um, I have confidence that it will get incrementally better over the next month and a half, 2 months. And then when 4.9 launches, we're gonna have a fresh set of problems, but we're not going to have the concurrency issues that we had that hit 4.8 so hard. And so you just we're going to have to ride the wave a little bit, but we are definitely in a year of 2 steps forward, one step back. But at the if each patch like that is 2 steps forward, then that means by the end of the year, we've made 4 big steps forward, in total. And so, and it will be playing a much different and even better game than we are already. And with 4.8 having problems, that's not saying a lot, but, given where we are now compared to where we were last year at the same time, the year before at the same time, you know, it's a lot of progress. The game is growing by leaps and bounds. And so, it just is what it is. And you got to take it in stride. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to switch screens. That way I have a nice little timestamp for when I upload this to YouTube. Give me 1 second, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Pardon me. Sorry. I have to keep clearing my throat. I was outside a lot with the kids today and all hoarse and stuff. Okay, I'll close those tabs. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the 4.8 the Q&A for the features and content of Alpha 4.8. Let's turn off the bookmarks. There we go, that's better. Oh yeah, Apples and Anarchy. Yeah, man. It it like this last weekend and into the early part of the week was just stupid windy here in Boise. And so just everything's covered in pollen and dust, and it's just like constantly swirling around, and the dogwood trees are blooming and dropping all their crap everywhere, and it just luckily I don't have any like nasal congestion, but it just leaves my throat itchy all day long. It drives me nuts. Really makes me want my huckleberry mules that I have here. Huckleberry, ginger beer, vodka. Yes, so good. There's another company that makes huckleberry margaritas that I get at the grocery store. Oh man, those are good. So good. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a refill here in a little bit. All right, so pardon me. I use this image for the thumbnail for the podcast, but obviously you can see like it's the Q&A, and they've got a tab for each of the major groups of things: ship hangar services, the command module, refueling improvements, Ultiflex Novian crossbow, cast-like arms, plasma grenade. Huckleberry doesn't sound like a real thing. I didn't know it was a real thing until I moved to Idaho. I'd never heard, never had Huckleberry. The only thing I knew about Huckleberry was Tombstone. I'll be your Huckleberry, until I moved to Idaho, because like we don't have them in, California, up in the Sierra Nevadas where I grew up. Um, and like we used to go camping in Oregon a lot, but we never went to the parts of Oregon where Huckleberry are from. And so we did a lot of our camping in the southwestern states, and a little bit up into Oregon. So I just had never experienced it, but once I got here and found that you can get practically every huckleberry and everything, I fell in love. It's my favorite berry. Huckleberry Hound. Yeah, Huckleberry Hound. Forgot about that guy. Yep. 31 years old and 32 years. Yeah. Alrighty. So, Alpha 4.8 Tactical Strike arrives with a range of new additions and improvements, and we went straight to the teams involved to ask the questions we knew were on your mind. From ship hangar services to the command module, refueling improvements to the Ultiflex Novian. I always thought it was Novia. It's Novian, or is that a typo? Ultiflex Novian crossbow. Here are the answers from the devs themselves. I'd memory hold that. So, ship hangar services tier 0. This image is important. It is Novian. Okay, man. All these years. This image is important, and I'll explain why after we get through this first section of the Q&A. What is ship hangar services tier 0? First and most important point. Ship hangar services tier 0 is the initial version of a feature that enables ships with dedicated service bays. Dedicated service bays. Okay. Remember, words mean things. Words are important. Novian huckleberries. Dedicated service base. So when people talk about the Liberator, is the Liberator going to get it? Well, in the Liberator Q&A, they asked if it has any, dedicated or built-in, or what, I forget what the verbiage is, repair, refuel, rearm ability. And they said no. You players would have to do it by hand, from supplies from the cargo grid, because it doesn't have dedicated facilities compared to a ship like the Kraken, compared to a ship like the Idris, things that have dedicated hangars. And so that's the difference, and we'll see if they change it. Who knows, they might change it, they might make it so that it's actually a dedicated hangar. But the Liberator is meant to be like the C2M2 in that it is a transport. It isn't it isn't it says light carrier, but it's not a carrier in that it has the support services that a carrier actually does. Now, can you still do it from the it was 400 SCU on the cargo grid internally. Who knows if it got bigger, but that's the important verbiage. So it's a dropship. I mean, it's, it, the naming is just wonky because, the definition of a dropship is it gets dropped from a carrier, so, um, one, the 600i has, that's meant to be like a hangar. And so maybe it will, maybe it won't. We don't know. We don't know how that'll go. All we know is they did a little bit of pre-production work on it last year, and we haven't heard shit since. But that's the important part is the dedicated service bays to repair, refuel, and restock the ammo. The Kraken has hangars. So will you be able to do those things on the pads? We don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if your ability to do those things is limited on the pads versus landing on the hangar. um, the Ironclad, always had Assault always had a repair bay. That was always meant to be a thing, but we don't know what this will look like in the later iterations of ship hangar services. So I don't think the Liberator isn't going to grow like that. It's not an old enough ship to change that much. I think if anything, we will get additional Anvil ships that are of that size. But the days of things substantially changing like that are long gone, because when for years now, ships have had their white box done as part of the concept process, and so they haven't made big substantial changes. Um, go read the first paragraph on the. You know what? Tell you what, we got a whole bunch of new people here. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it live, just because this is one of the things I always harp on. Liberator Anvil. This is how many times I've looked it up. I type in lib e, and it automatically pops up because it knows me. So Liberator comlink. Again, words mean things. No, the vehicle just means vehicles. Vehicles can be ground vehicles. Vehicles can be ships. It is an all-encompassing. Unless they say ground vehicles, it doesn't mean only vehicles. But they also, they updated it. But it was always meant to be able to do repairs. So, go the distance with the Anvil Liberator, with the Liberator light carrier. From the Navy's most ubiquitous fighters to massive warships. What's tomorrow, guys? Say it with me now. Anvil Odin Day, massive warship, and large-scale troop and vehicular transport. Large-scale troop and vehicular transport. Anvil is synonymous with space combat and military operations, due in no small part to a laser focus on the mission at hand. So space combat, massive warships, and military operations, large-scale troop and vehicular transport. Anvil continues its tradition of excellence with the Liberator, an open-air vehicle carrier that applies the tradition of long-range transport to a smaller scale. That means the Liberator, which is over 100 meters long, follows the same tradition of other long-range transports, large-scale troop and vehicular transports, but on a smaller scale, which means that Anvil makes things for transporting troops and vehicles that are much larger than the Liberator, which is set in the same context as the massive warship, and we're getting the frickin' battlecruiser tomorrow as a concept. Right there, folks. Right there. Hey, Mistral19K07, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. So, take that for what it's worth, but it's CIG's words. We're going to get bigger than the Liberator. Anvil LHD, Anvil LPD. Come on, CIG, do the thing. Pardon me. If you don't know those are, Google it. And you'll be like, oh. Or hop in my Discord and I'll write an essay for you. Bet my cutlass could tow an Odin and hold my beer. Have you seen those pictures like of people making fun of Cybertrucks because they're like, have a full bed of cement or something like that? I forget what it was, or towing something, and they're like, oh yeah, it's got great towing capacity. It's a truck. And then like somebody puts in like a Chevy from the 1970s pulling a Boeing 747 or some shit, something big like that. Yeah. So, and restock the ammo, missiles, and countermeasures of any ship or vehicle that fits within its base. Ship or vehicle. So repair bays or service bays are not specific to whether it's a ship or a vehicle. It just has to fit within the bay. Now, obviously, I'm sure people are going to try it, but getting a ground vehicle into the hangar of a Star Lancer might be a bit challenging. But park it next to a cliff, drive over on that thing, let it fall in, repair, refuel your arm. But it's meant to make it actually makes it less of a tech challenge for them if they versus trying to separate it out, because the Idris has a ramp. You'll probably, it'll be interesting to see how they make it work for, will the, and I haven't even checked out the Carrack yet, but, say the Carrack and the Odyssey, which both have a vehicle bay and a hangar. Will the vehicle bay be able to repair, refuel, rearm ground vehicles, or is it just the hangar? I think it should be both. That's me, but we'll see. To allow the stocking of resources, new countermeasures and ammunition commodities are available in shops. And it is the commodity shops at the admin offices. If you go to commodity shops at like the TDDs, I went to Lorville and New Babbage today. I did not see them in the TDDs, only at the commodity shops at the admin offices. Additionally, missiles can now be stacked on cargo grids, which is a great quality of life thing. Now they just need to, what we really need is not only to be able to stack them on cargo grids, but more importantly, be able to have a rack and stack them on the rack, and then just be able to lift the rack as a single unit. So you're not each individual one, you just stack them all once, move the whole thing once, and then it just pulls from the inventory. Yeah, a quick loader. Even make it like if they're big ones and you have like 12 size 9 torpedoes or something like that. Okay, now it's too heavy for your hand tool and you need a max lift. I don't know. Figure it out. But be able to only have to stack it once, not stack and then unstack, and stack again. Yeah. It's nice because it saves a whole lot of space, but we need more. Give me more, CAG. We're always asking for more. Storage improvements for stacked missiles are in the works, hooray, which will allow them to sit cleanly on grids rather than floating. Yay! We've already seen them, in locations. They're sitting just outside of customs at Levski and a number of other places. So just give it to us now. Okay. So, what does Tier 0 mean in practical terms, and what can players expect from the feature at launch? Tier 0 delivers the base functionality with no cooldown between servicing operations. Ships can cycle in and out continuously. Monitoring capabilities, permissions management, and pricing controls are planned for future iterations. capabilities, permissions, and pricing controls. Which ships offer ship hangar services at launch, and do they all provide the full suite of repair, rearm, and refuel? At launch, the Aegis Idris variants, which is the P and the M, the RSI Polaris, which again has a hangar, but then it also has a cargo bay. Has anyone tried it yet? Has anyone tried to repair or refuel, or not refuel, but repair or rearm a ground vehicle in something like the Carrack or the 890 Jump? I haven't tried it yet. Yeah, what do people expect about Tier 0? Come on, guys. Um, Origin 890 Jump and 600i, the Anvil Carrack, the Misk Starlancer TAC, and Drake Ironclad Assault are supported with others to come. How soon? Currently, all supported ships offer the same range of services. So, again, I've seen people repair. Okay, so you can repair ground vehicles in ground vehicle bays. That's what I would hope for, but CIG. But right there's a caveat. Don't forget that. Weasel words, folks. Currently, all supported ships offer the same range of services. Now, will all ships be able to do the reloading, the refueling, or like say the Ironclad. The Ironclad is always supposed to have a repair bay, but in the future, the Ironclad might have the ability to do an automated repair because it has a repair bay, but you might have to manually rearm and refuel it via like a refueling cart thing. Like if you can see fuel carts in the hangars now, and at other locations where you could push it along and you hook up the hose and you fill up the fuel tank. You store that on your or something like that on your cargo grid, and now you have the ability to fuel in your hangar. But it's not automatic; a player has to do it. Same with this, the Idris. I don't think it's an accident that this image shows the fuel lines in an Idris hangar that connect to a fuel port that pops up out of the deck and allows someone to attach it to a ground fuel port and refuel a vehicle. It doesn't make any sense for many ships to do repairs. Yeah, most ships shouldn't be able to do repairs. I agree. I think that this is again Tier 0. I think that this is just getting the feature in so that way you can do it there. You can get service there, but it will get more restrictive and more involved in the future. I think it should go without saying that what we have as Tier 0 is not what we're going to have at essentially Tier 3, especially because of what they've shown us, and what they're going to talk about later. But right there, currently all supported ships offer the same range of services. I would be willing to bet money that this same list of ships won't have all the same services in the future. Yeah, the Asgard shouldn't have a repair function, but you can do it by hand. But like we're gonna pull up the Anvil Liberator Q&A. Liberator Q and A, because it's a good example. And remember, this is only a few years old. What sort of capabilities will this ship have for refueling, repairing, and rearming the ships and vehicles it carries? I believe there are fuel tanks shown in the concept art, the external ones. The Liberator will only support basic levels of refueling, repairing, and rearming, which will be done manually by players on board using supplies stored in the cargo bay. It does not have dedicated facilities or separate stores. So dedicated facilities like the repair bay of the Ironclad, maybe during the white box phase in pre-production, maybe they'll add that. We don't know, but based off of this, what we have right now, it doesn't. The M2 does not. Nope, and the M2 was never designed to do that. And that's why I don't think the M2 is going to be any different than the Liberator, and that's part of your trade-off between a Liberator and an Ironclad. The Liberator I think, has a lot more space for carrying vehicles than the Ironclad, but the Ironclad um, has a dedicated repair bay. You can still use your hand tools. You can still use, a fuel cart. You can still use hand tools to rearm and everything, because like we're going to be getting the little ammo things in order to. There's going to be like a little port, a little place where you can just shove an ammo box into, or do something in order to rearm a Hornet, ballistically in the field. Yeah, and I mean, who knows what higher tier things we'll have in the future? They've never mentioned anything like that. We'll see. I think it's mostly going to be stat based. I don't think it's going to be adding capabilities, but we don't know. Just because that would be a whole lot more artwork for CIG in order to add these things in, because it's not going to be hand wavy. Yeah, if you go into the Ironclad Assault, you can see the infrastructure there. You can see the gantries in certain ships. CIG isn't going to build all these glorious animations for all these other parts of the ship and then not do anything for the dedicated facilities of ships in order to make it look like you're actually getting repaired, refueled, and such. But when they say dedicated facilities or separate stores, there's no dedicated refueling facility, but there's a hose line that plugs into a fuel port that pops up out of the ship. So you're not using SCU space for fuel tanks. You land your Idris, you dock your Idris, and you tell it to fill up your fuel tanks for the Idris, and you also tell it to fill up your auxiliary tanks, or whatever you want to call them, for refueling vehicles aboard your ship. That would be what a dedicated facility would be. Having a repair gantry, over each landing pad in order to have like a robot arm that comes down and does the repairs and 3D prints your ship to put it back together. That would be a dedicated facility. I don't think, who knows how they'll be doing rearming, but I don't think we're going to be getting dedicated rearming facilities other than drones. I don't think you're going to have a drone flying around and rearming things in the Idris. But I think that's what you'll have in hangars at stations, and maybe certain ships will be able to do that besides something like the Vulcan. But lots of caveats in just these first 3 paragraphs that people need to be aware of in order to set your expectations appropriately. That's why I'm reading this, because I've read it and I'm using it to set my own expectations appropriately, so I don't become disappointed, so I can, have a good idea of what is coming for the future. That's why I play the way I do, because I try to play for where I think CIG intends the game to go. Well, the Kraken. Remember the concept? Here. Drake, Kraken. Link. This is what I think of when obviously, like, I don't think it's going to look like this, but, because this is concept art and everything, but I think that there will be some sort of, if you go back to the age-old videos of what they were doing, and looking at and concepting repair work, like they had like almost like a robot arm, like you'd see in a factory that makes cars, like doing welds and stuff, and like the ship slowly coming back together. They had ideas for it, and I think it'll probably end up being something similar like that for the dedicated repair gantries for putting a ship back together. What was interesting yesterday, Wednesday, and then I played around with it again today just to do some testing. Or no, sorry, last night. Last night was Friday. Is let's see. It was my friend Captain here in Boise. He was flying the Gladiator off the hangar deck of the Idris while we were doing missions. Danger Hobo in chat was his turret gunner. And they took a bunch of damage. They got a bit too close to a Hammerhead. I got a bit too close to Hammerhead too, but they were more unlucky because the Gladiator is more unwieldy than a Hornet, and they literally lost the majority of both wings, and the body was damaged. Like the landing gear was just hovering there and not actually attached to the ship. Yeah, that motherfucker headhunting us. Yeah, well, and that same Hammerhead took out Northern Trooper, who is in my F-7A Mark II, right? And I was in the Mark One. It was fun. We had to do a little. They managed to. So not only did it lose both wings, but the Gladiator was essentially, was it soft death, or it was essentially disabled. And so they had to use the repair function on the power plant to get it moving. And they had no coolers, and so it was overheating. But they managed to limp it back to the Idris. Um, yeah, Marvin, I'm the of the same manner. I think that we will have the drones in our hangars, in stations and landing zones, and we'll have the drones for the Vulcan. But I think for ships with dedicated hangars, I don't think you're going to have little drone bays popping out. I think they're going to have a sort of uniform, repair gantry, arm things that will do an animation, but it'll 3D print it just like the drone does, essentially. But it was cool. So they limped the Gladiator back to the Idris. What we found is that you can't. No one who all the ships in the hangar were mine, the two Hornets and the Gladiator, and so no one was able to do any of the R&R stuff in using my ships. They would have to get out, I would have to get in, and I would have to do it. But we had plenty of RMC in order to, or at least I assume it's plenty, in order to repair the Gladiator. We had like 8 SCU of it. Um, and it was not letting me repair. And so I don't know what the consumption rates are like, but I could not repair the Gladiator from the state it was in. The coolers were completely shot. I think there was other components that were completely shot. It had most of both wings were gone, along with like other fins and stuff. Um, it was just barely there. Um, and I couldn't repair it. But when I took it back, when I took it to Lorville and landed the Idris, I pulled the Gladiator out, pulled it off the side, stored the Idris, and then I put the Gladiator on the pad there, and um, the game didn't recognize it. Like when I went to the ASOP terminal, it said location unknown for my Gladiator, and it wouldn't let me repair it on the pad. It like didn't recognize that it was there. So I guess it becoming disabled, almost I guess soft death, like made it broken in the game somehow. And so I ended up having to just claim it and brick it and salvage, whatever it's not salvage, whatever that button is on the ASOP now, to get it to go away and pull up a new Gladiator, because I couldn't repair it in the Idris. I couldn't repair it in the hangar at Lorville. Somehow it got just broken. Even though I could get in and fly it, it would overheat, in fairly short order. But it was still functional. Scrap it. Thank you, Northern Trooper. But yeah, so that was an interesting bit of testing. But we also got to I had a C8R on the flight deck, and Danger Hobo was able to use that in order to do a little combat search and rescue to pick up Northern Trooper and get him back aboard the ship. And then they hopped in the turrets, and we went and I used the beam for the Idris K beam to kill the Hammerhead, and then we managed to kill the target, which was a constellation with the turrets, and mission complete, burrito I eat. So it was a really interesting fight, and we got to test some things, and it was really cool to be able to play that, given the limitations of the game, how we can sort of expect it to play more in the future, or more along those lines. Let's see. So players are familiar with landing zone servicing. What's different about how ship hangar services works in the field? 4 tier 0. 4 tier 0. Again, caveats. All the words are important. They mean things. The UI and procedure will be identical for those requesting services in landing zone hangars. Players must be in their vehicle and landed to access the landing app. The game insurance did a write-off. Yeah. oh gosh, what's that? What's it called? The when someone like insurance writes it off and you can buy it as a salvage title and stuff. Yeah. They wrote it off. They wouldn't let me repair it. They're like, no, we're not going to insure that thing. Yeah, that's funny. I like that. Um, but there's ways of words right that for tier zero. So for tier one, for tier two, yeah, they totaled it. They totaled it out. And they're like, oh, you can do with it what you want, but we're not going to insure that thing. And and if we're not insuring it, you can't repair it. But so for later tiers, the UI and the procedures, don't expect them to be the same. They're saying it right here. If I only need fuel and not repairs, can I request just that, or does the system service everything at once? Well, they just said it works the same way as ship hangar services, which lets you request just that. And if I want the full package, is there a quick option for that? Yeah, auction. That would actually be kind of cool. If you could buy a salvage title for a total ship and bring it back, and it costs you a tiny fraction, to do that, and if you have the resources, it's cheaper than buying a new ship, but you have to put in the work to you know get it back to up and running and looking new and be able to insure it. You resell it and you can't get a full price because it's a salvage title. The options are the same as at landing zone hangars. Repair is all or nothing. If insufficient RMC is available, no repairs occur. So that's my question. Did I not have enough RMC? Because we had 8 SCU. And right now the consumption rate for ammo is really small, like really slow. I think like it's like for 1,000 rounds is like 1% of an SCU or something like that. I forget. We're talking about it, but I refueled rearmed ballistics on the Hornets multiple times, and it didn't make the percentage on our crates go down at all. But I don't know if that also was updating correctly or not. Who knows? Refuel fills the hydrogen in quantum tanks until full or by a specific amount. Restock replenishes ballistic ammo, countermeasures, and missiles. Ammo comes in several sizes and must match the size of weapon. All countermeasures come in decoy and noise varieties, and all ships share the same type. For missiles, racks that still have missiles loaded can only be restocked with the exact same missile type. Empty racks can be restocked with any missile of the correct size. And all services button was considered for quick servicing, but is unsupported for tier 0. Players must select each service individually. Like it takes you a tenth of a second to go click, 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 click all 4. Foxy had a video where he was repairing on the Assault, and it was using a lot of the material to repair. Okay, I must have watched the run. I know he's got several videos on it, and I watched one of them, but I don't think I watched the other one, so maybe I missed that. I've seen the SCU repair costs exceed 16 SCU for a small ship. Ooh, okay. Well, that might. Okay, but that is very interesting though. So let's say, for sake of discussion, maybe the 8 SCU of RMC that we had wasn't enough to do all the repairs on that Gladiator, because a good chunk of that Gladiator was gone, along with the components being all damaged or gone completely. But the question remains: why was I not able to repair it at Lorville? Was it just like that because it was a separate game session? Because we ended up logging out. I logged back in today. I flew it all the way from Nix to Lorville, landed, pulled it out, landed it, stored the address, tried to repair it, still couldn't repair it, and it didn't recognize that it was on the pad. It didn't recognize it was on the pad until I claimed it, and then it said bricked. And then I was able to scrap it. Oh yeah, CIG's SCU for fuel and parts is so messed up. Yeah, it's going to be such a massive rebalancing in terms of the numbers, and consumption and stuff in order to address all that, because it is all over the place. Yeah, the C8R, the cutter, you can't refuel a cutter. You can't fully refuel a cutter with a Starlight because it takes like 21 SCU of fuel, which is far bigger than the volume of the entire ship. Yeah, at one Bellissimo, I think it is buggy, but I did that too. I did that with the Gladiator. I stored the Idris. I tried to repair the Gladiator, wouldn't let me. I stored the Gladiator, and then I pulled it back up, and I tried to repair it again, and it still wouldn't. Or no, I didn't. I didn't store the Gladiator because it wouldn't let me store it because it didn't recognize that it was there. Um, but when I pulled up a Hornet, that Gladiator was still on the pad. So somehow it got borked. I don't know how or why. Spawn a new hangar instead of claiming the ship. That's what I have to do now, transporting ships in an ironclad. Yeah, I'll have to try it. I mean, that's part of the fun of all this is not only have we been grinding missions and having a good time and getting into some good fights and stuff and, earn a little cash, but we've been able to test these things out and put our heads together, as a group and okay, this works, this doesn't, how's this intended? What video have you watched? What posts have you seen? It's interesting. How quickly can ship hangar services turn a ship around? With this Tier 0 implementation, services are provided almost instantly. In a future patch, wait times will be introduced based on the amount of resources consumed for the services. So, this is important. They're already intending to put in wait times based off of how much um, resources consumed, for the service. So you've taken a bunch of damage. You have to get a bunch of fuel. You're low on ammo or you're bingo on ammo. It's going to take you a while. That is part of the reason why we're still going to have manual stuff. Because if you have a good ground crew, they can get it done faster. They want players to have the opportunity to be good at this and get it done faster because that gets it, just like medical gameplay, that gets you back in the fight. Conserve fighting strength. Get your ships back in the fight. Do it, out in the field, field repairs rather than having to go all the way back to the station and waste that time flying. That's the part of this. That's why this image is here with these fuel lines and such. Because you'll be able to, for certain services, you'll be able to do the automated route, but you also be able to do the manual route, or some things you'll just have to do manually, even though this is technically a facility because it will have onboard fuel stores rather than you buying fuel tanks and wheeling them around, but use 550 and 90 mph tape easy. Yeah. Yep. Maybe some baling wire too. Olive drab duct tape, none of that silver stuff that's not tactical. But yeah, so I mean, if you're gonna have a timer, like it'll have a timer and everything in order to, give people more choice and think about things. And okay, well, I don't want to be out of the fight for a long time, so I'm gonna go back now and repair while I have, only a little bit of damage versus, maybe it scales exponentially. Who knows? How many ships can be serviced at once, and is there any kind of queue system for managing demand? There is currently, again, weasel words, caveats, folks, no limit other than the physical limit of space in the bay. As the feature develops, bays will support a defined number of vehicles at once, with additional ships entering a queue until a slot becomes available. This is important. It doesn't show it right now, but last patch before this came out, if I had ships on the in the hangar bay of the Idris, it would, and then I stored the Idris at say Lorville or whatever, and I went to the ASOP terminal. It would tell me what pad on the Idris hangar those ships were on. And if I had multiple ships on one pad, it would only show one of them and the other one would be unknown. So like right now I've got an F7A Mark 1 and Mark II, and a Gladiator, one on each of the 3 pads of the Idris. And last patch, it would have said, this on pad 1, this on pad, this on, Idris pad 1, Idris pad P, pad 2, Idris P, pad 3. But other times I would, have 2 fighters, in the first 2 bays. In the third bay, I'd have a C8R and 2 C8Xs. Well, then it would only show the fighters on bay 1, on pad 1 and pad 2, and then like the C8R or 1 C8X on pad 3, and the other 2, the location would be unknown. I think we're going to go back to that. I think it's going to be based off of, you have to be able to fit essentially on the pad, and B, it will only work on one, vehicle within the pad at a time. And yeah, you may be able to put more vehicles on there, but say for the instance of those C8s, okay, well, I'm repairing or refueling the C8R, and the other 2 can't get services until the C8R is done, and moves out of the queue essentially. For crews who want to lean into the support role, what does running ship hangar services look like in practice? Who's doing what, and how many hands does it take to run it well? 4 tier 0. Caveat right there. Practically every one of these answers has a caveat or some weasel words at the beginning. Pay attention to these. So 4 tier 0, the role of managing a ship's services requires understanding the fleet it supports. So right now, I'm saving money so that way I can have the same ballistic guns on my Hornets, and the same missiles between the Hornets and the Gladiator, while keeping size 5 torpedoes in the size 5 bay. Ship will have to snap on like Argo. Yeah, I mean, that would be, I'm totally for that. I'm totally for that. If it fits, it sits, applies to sitting. If it fits, it sits, should not apply to repair, refuel your arm. You shouldn't be able to put in 20 some odd arrows in your hangar and service them all at once. You have 3 bays, you can service 3 ships, and they have to fit within reason. Because otherwise, people are like, no, it's there, it should work, and like, you don't understand. It's not a matter of, it's a game. It's a matter of, if they made it support all of that excess, jank, that is so much more work for the devs than to just make it a straightforward system where 1 pad, 1 ship has to fit on the pad, has to fit on the pad, rather than like, oh, I can fit the nose of my Polaris in the butt of an Idris, so I should be able to repair, refuel, rearm it, right? Because it's the nose is on the bay. No, it has to fit within the confines of the pad to get serviced on the pad. If you want more than that, you are delaying the feature, and just asking for more bugs and more problems for no reason. So you can have your jank. And to be honest, it's just short-sighted and a little bit on the selfish side. We'll just have it make sense. It's a lot easier for them to develop the feature if they just do it in a way that's more simple and logical. For example, while RMC and fuel are uniform across ships, ammo and missile needs vary. After establishing the fleet's needs, the role involves purchasing, loading, monitoring, and maintaining stock. So loading, one issue that is a very big pain, is we tested out essentially underway replenishment. We used a C1 to bring ammo, fuel, RMC, I think that was it, from the Stanton Gateway Station in Nix to the Idris, and then offloaded it, via tractor beam onto the Idris. But it would only let us buy 1 type of support commodity at a time into storage at the location. And so what we figured out worked, and what we had to do would say, okay, I'm going to buy the ammo, and then the person would have to go to go to the hangar and pull the ammo up in the freight elevator, and pull it onto the pad or into the ship, and then that would allow, so we essentially took turns. I bought the ammo, and my buddy Matt bought maybe the quantum fuel. And so he'd run over and he load the quantum fuel up, and then I'd use the elevator to pull up the ammo while he's running back to get the next thing, because it wouldn't let you buy more into the local inventory until you had pulled that and you couldn't buy more of anything. You couldn't buy, okay, I'm going to buy a 4SU box of size 4 ammo, and now I want to buy a 4SU box of quantum fuel. Nope, wouldn't let you buy anything. Vlad Tepeth says, I can't even load up the game right now. Oh man, you are having a way worse time than me. I am so sorry, friend. Thanks for coming and stopping by and hanging out in chat. Do you know what the problem is, or do you have any idea? The performance in 4.8 is not great. I'm having screen tearing. I'm having some frame drops, and I have a 9800X 3D DDR5 6000 megahertz 64 gigs and a 7900 XTX. And I'm only getting 100 to 120 frames in space, and locations on planets and stuff. I struggle to hit 60, which is not normal for me at all. And I get a lot of places where pretty significant frame drops and stuff. Yeah, so a pocket calculator, humble flex. Yeah, no, I've always been a nope. I have to have a top end system. I only recently switched from NVIDIA just because I can't justify the price point of NVIDIA anymore, given the performance disparity just is not there for that much money. I got kids; they're expensive. But I'll probably be running on the system for several years because, again, kids are expensive. But the performance in 4.8 is not great, and I know there's been a lot of crashes reported client side. I have had a few 30Ks in terms of the server errors, but everything's recovered just fine. What I am still having is the 30,000 errors where I'm having client disconnects and just getting kicked back to menu, and I have to climb back in. But they talked about how they're looking into that in the last monthly report. I don't think it's a me issue. I think it's a them issue because they talked about it in the monthly report. Star Citizen not responding, launcher not working. Oh, geez. Man, I'm not going to try and fix your tech issues with it over chat right now, but that sucks, bro. Yeah, for your sanity. I mean, I've tried a lot of things, but I just gave up on it because it only happens like sometime. Kids running on NVIDIA, yeah. Some sessions it only happens once, and other sessions it'll happen 3 or 4 times over, but it's over like a 4-hour period, and I'm back in the game within a minute. I have a decent rig, but it's the missions crapping out on me that's driving me insane. I've been doing box runs and MC bounties again to make money. Yeah, and that's the thing is the mission system is working, but so many of the missions are borked right now. Like the intersect patrol missions are borked. You can't play. Hadn't played since 318, 103 gig download to get 4.8. Woo! Oh man, that's a long time. So let's continue on. How do you see payment and compensation systems developing within ship hangar services? As there is currently no interface for the host ship to set prices, we made the decision to make services free, allowing players to use the feature to support their orgs. As the feature matures, we plan to introduce a dedicated service terminal to give host ship operators full control over pricing and permissions. He picks the right patches to play. Does the system distinguish between an invited guest and an intruder when another player enters your hangar? Yes, players who trespass aboard a ship will automatically be blocked from using its services, which is nice. They can't steal your shit. What does the vision for ship hangar services look like beyond Tier 0, and will more ships be added to the roster over time? The full feature will aim to include a service terminal added to any ship with a service hangar, allowing for service terminal and service hangar, not just a cargo.
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Hey, World Peace, thanks so much for the follow.
Part of the crew,
Really
part of the
appreciate it.
man. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Pardon me. Management of permissions depending on the user's relationship with this within the social app. So like you can set it to be like, oh no, not just friends. You got to be a member of the org. This is an org ship. Or it might even be you could have it set based off of rep. Who knows? Maybe it's a law status. There's lots of different things they can do. Approval of requests from unapproved users. So someone can request to be like, hey, I see your Idris over there. I'm not a criminal. You can verify my credentials and everything. I was hoping that to get refueled, or I took some damage in a dogfight. Any chance you can repair me? And they could look you up by your character name, like, oh yeah, they've got good rep with, the Merc Guild. Yeah, we'll take a chance on them. And of course the Ironclad Assault has the internal turret. So, yeah, go ahead, come on in. No funny business. Management of resource pricing depending on the user's relationship within the social app. So if you're a member of the org, you can say, hey, yeah, it's this price. If you're only just a friend, it's this price. If you're if there's stranger danger, it's this price, and you have to get approved. Monitoring of resource inventory on grids, so that way you know how much you had of whatever. 4.9 needs to be nothing but social features, and radar and scanning. Radar and scanning. Radar and scanning. Radar and scanning. Locking of amounts of resources from use in services, so that way you can say, okay, I don't want to get into well, I don't want to bring it back into that E buffer where you only have 1 gallon left in your tank. 3 times the price of your name starts with tree. Fine. Didn't want your fuel anyway. But yes, we desperately need social features, but the way Benoit talked about it and it coming in phases, or I forget what adjective he used, we're gonna get drip fed it throughout this year and into next year. Yeah, I'm hoping we get more suit stuff. I really want industry suits to be able to, say you're using a two-handed, a tool, doing mining, doing repair. I want, or even maybe, using a tractor beam and being able to, have a backpack that, has a battery in it, and you have extended battery life. You don't have to swap out the batteries on the tool as often. Have it so you have to be wearing a industry suit and have the backpack equipped, and that's the only way that, otherwise you have to like unload the tool into your backpack. But if you have the right suit, like the Arrow, it's got the hose that runs down your arm and it goes directly into the tool, and you can just mine or scrape or whatever directly into your backpack, and vice versa for repair. You can have a whole backpack full of RMC or whatever it is, and just without having to swap it out. Yeah, specialized helmets are really cool too. But specialized helmets are that's a radar and scanning thing as well. Until we get radar and scanning in, I don't think we're going to get more specialization in the helmets. They talked about that for like medical gameplay and medical gear. Players able to select the amount of ballistics and missiles they want rearmed. So I want 1 bullet. Wait time per unit of resource consumed. So that is all the questions for ship hangar services. Before we go on to the command module, I'm going to play a couple clips, or let's see, 1 clip from Squadron 42 that goes along with this image, so you can see what I'm talking about in terms of manual stuff, because they've always said that they have built the ships and built all the behaviors that the way we interact with things, so that way NPCs can do the same interactions and functions that players can, and vice versa. And we all know that the Idris that we have in the PU is old and outdated, and is not is not the same one that we have in the Squadron. So it doesn't have all the same stuff and doesn't look the same. Again, here's this image. So let's see it happen in Squadron 42. This is from I Held the Line in 2023.
For the animation teams, polish phase means refining the social aspects of Squadron 42 that occur between the various missions and getting the behaviors implemented across all of its chapters. Here we're dialing in the...
Okay, so if you go into My Idris right now, you can see the panels that these pop up from. They are there, that you can't interact with them. They don't do anything, but these things that pop up right here, this one is a fuel port. I don't know what this one is, but you can see where they are right here in this section. This is like right where my C8R sits right now. Look, there's the missile rack right there. We just need them functional in the PU. Apparently they function, or maybe they're just set dressing, but I doubt they're just set dressing. But that's what those look like. And see, there's the fuel hose. Remember years ago they talked about bedsheet deformation, and then they got similarly made fun of, but to a lesser extent, for rope tech. This is the rope tech. It isn't just actual ropes. It's things that behave like ropes, like hoses.
Hangar to make it as immersive and believable an experience as possible.
That'll do it.
So you see that guy grabbing it. There's the fuel line hooked up into this fuel port thing. Again, I don't know what this whole tower thing is, but there's multiples of these. There's one on each side of each bay. So you could have somebody refueling. This one you select it for hydrogen. The one over here on the opposite side is quantum, and you could have, depending on how many people you've got, you can very quickly turn around vehicles, or you can make it so we're going to run a skeleton crew and you hop out of your ship and you refuel yourself. Like, if you're refueling your car in real life right now versus, if you live in California versus in Oregon, I don't know. But again, an immersive experience. They've made it very immersive in Squadron 42. Everything in Squadron 42 has the potential to be in the PU. When it comes to animations, assets, functionality, it's just not a matter of if, but when, for the most part.
Done. Okay.
Because our NPC crew will be able to do this using the exact same behaviors. Those are post 1.0, but until then, players can do it.
Right. Let's do this. I have to switch out so the interchange from back.
Ground fuel port on the Gladius. Just pulls the hose right over there. And so you can imagine if you had a really well-drilled crew, they land, you come in, you land, or maybe they don't even land. Maybe they just hover. And somebody just runs out with the hose and they're quickly doing that. And maybe they're really good with the nozzle control. You can refill them faster. If you're not, safe, maybe cause an accident or something. That's how you start fires. Essential Asa, do you think we'll get portable fuel tanks for manual refueling? Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's every hangar type, but some of the hangar types, if you go into those bays along the sides, you can see carts that have fuel tanks on them, and it says fuel on it. That's what they talked about with things like the for the Q&A for the Liberator. If you've got one of those things on your cargo grid in your cargo on your cargo grid in the Liberator, which is in the back left, if it's stuck on the grid, you're not going to be able to refuel it if it's a vehicle in the front or a vehicle on the top. But if it's on, if it's just a wheeled thing that you can push around, you just push it to the elevator to go refuel the ships as they come land on the top pads. Push it back in the elevator to refuel the ground vehicles or whatever you have on the inside of the vehicle bay. And so on. Who knows how the ammo thing is going to work? I think that we're going to get small little ports that you can put like 1/8 SCU boxes in, of ammo. And so you have to have the right size ammo boxes or right size ammo for it. We'll see. I have no idea how they're going to do rearming in terms of like ballistics, but they did talk about that briefly when they were talking, going over the Vulcan. but that's with drones. So who knows? My biggest pain point is being unable to refuel hover bikes or snubs without QT. Oh, refueling their hydrogen? Well, you can do it with this, right? I don't know. I haven't done that. One Blissimo, what are you talking about? Rework of all ships for what? Because, like, the majority of the newer ships have ground fuel ports. They put a fuel port on a ground fuel port on the command module. If you have a space, put an ammo box. I don't know. They're gonna. That was one thing that they talked about briefly with the drones. Is that you would fly them over to the ship, and then you would tell it to do the thing, and then it would play an animation to refuel them, rearm them, do the repairs and stuff. But like, think about how you're going to have to rearm larger ships. How there's going to be essentially like a miniature freight elevator, and you put a box of ammo in it. Who knows how big the boxes are? I imagine they're going to be hand carryable, or tractor beamable. But that's how you're going to do rearming for ballistics on ships like the Perseus, and essentially it'll be like there'll be little bays where you can put the ammo in, and that will go into an automated feeder. Essentially it gets moved around throughout the ship, and who knows if there'll be multiples of them, or just like one, that you have to feed from the cargo bay. Yeah, I mean, long term, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But the way they've talked about it, like, that's how it's going to be. And so I can't imagine you having to, manually put ammo into the magazine, the ballistic magazines, essentially, for your big ships. But then fighters get magic, it just poof. See, that it's not how CIG does anything. We have physicalized components. We have physicalized repair. Like, there's no way with everything that they do for animations and immersions that they're going to cop out and just make it like every other game where you just press a button and it just magically goes poof. I always view the arming port looking like the salvage ports in the Vulture, just in reverse. Who knows? I have no idea. I just know that the only thing that they've talked about is how they're going to do it in big ships. And you could put, think about how like big an ammo can is. Danger Hobo knows what I'm talking about, but how big an ammo can is, for, a machine gun, in real life, a big one, a crew served weapon. Okay, well, there you go. A 50 cal BMG, ammo can. Okay. They don't have it doesn't have to be true 1-to-1 scale for size. Yeah. Or Mark 19. Yeah. Those ones are pretty big, but it doesn't have to be true 1-to-1 scale size. You can make it so that way you can fit, 500 rounds of ballistic ammo in a can the size of a 240 or 50 cal can or whatever. Think about if you had 500 rounds in a can that you could still carry by hand, or do via tractor beam. You run over there, you open the thing, and then somebody using their multi-tool is able to reload, a Hornet in a span of like 10 seconds if they're good. Which again would just take the delay that they're going to put on there and make it a real thing. It'll take you longer if you do it yourself, but if you have a good drilled deck crew, they can get your ships back in the fight and essentially have keep you having greater numbers than your enemy who doesn't have the deck crew doing those things.
We're getting a weird airflow.
Anyway, I'm off. For example, we're launching off a space carrier, but we still ground the feel in real-world actions, refueling, repairing, and inspecting, and making sure that your next flight mission is a success. This means we're looking out for pops, hiccups, or awkward
Grounding it in real world things. Now they obviously are going to gamify these things, but that making it so that way it isn't just space magic, things magically go poof. Yeah, reloading an A10 cannon is going to take a long time. But in game, if you can gamify it so that way if you're good at it, it takes seconds. Sweet. It's believable, but there's player choice, player choice for you, player choice for your org. That it slows down the gameplay a little bit, so you have to think about things. Don't want to do all that? All right. Well, then go back to a station. Fly all the way back to a station and do that. That means that you are out of the fight for however long that takes versus I boost back over to my my Idris that's 15 seconds away, repair, refuel your arm, and you're back in the fight, whereas the other person is going to take 5-10 minutes and you're back in the fight in 2 minutes. Congratulations, you outnumber them for a greater period of the fight. Okay, before we get into the the command module of the Q&A, I'm going to refill my drink. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, let's talk about the command module. Pretty cool when you can get it to work. Hopefully they have all the kinks worked out, or at least for the most part, before we get to 4.9. Teacher's gone, let's riot. Mark 19, Danger Over says, Mark 19 had this weird quirk where if you didn't shoot more than 5 rounds, it would jam every time. Oh yeah, well, and that's why like the count for the burst was 6 to 8. Boom, 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 boom. And I don't know because I if you shorten it to 3 rounds, you'd have to re-rack it. Oh, Mike Lansing, the command module giving you a lot of hard times. Yeah, I tried it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait for them to get some fixes in because this is a pain. It's neat. I love that they put a tractor beam on the nose of this one right here. I do like the ironclad. I do like the placement of the tractor beams, the one here and the one up here on the rail. And then the internal one. I mean, you guys. This one being here in order to use it, not only to help with the ironclad, but also like it works really well for the caterpillar. But yeah, it definitely needs a lot of work. So command module, what is the command module? The command module is a detachable ship that serves as both the pilot station for the attached craft and an escape vehicle for the craft's crew. Pilot station, like they keep calling it escape vehicle, and I'm like, no, it's its own ship. Like you, with all those jump seats and everything, you can take the whole crew down and do a ground mission, and like it isn't just an escape vehicle. It's a very capable little ship for getting around to go do FPS missions. Oh yeah, socially confused. I was actually going to get to that, but I am 100% convinced that now that they have this tech in the game and they'll iron it out and polish it, that it's going to get reused a lot. And not just for Drake. The feature of the command module, is going to get used by other manufacturers. What can the command module do when detached? When the command module is connected to the host ship, its own systems are disabled and control of the host functions is assumed by the module, allowing players to manage power allocation and more from within. When detached, both ships operate entirely independently, with each crew controlling their own systems. The command module functions like any other ship. It can fly, quantum travel, and engage in limited combat scenarios due to its weapons loadout. How has the command module changed since it was first envisioned? Compared to the original Caterpillar module, you'll notice a slight size increase to accommodate all the requirements of both the original Caterpillar and Ironclad crew sizes for its role as an escape vehicle. In addition, the full set of components to make the ship function is physicalized and accessible, and a ground entrance ladder is now fully set up. All the drop seats have personal storage integrated into their bases, and the ship retains some bunk beds too. Overall, the command module retains the spirit of the original but has been updated to modern standards inside and out. Does the command module have a docking collar allowing it to dock with ships beyond the Ironclad and Caterpillar? No, the only ships it can currently connect to are the Caterpillar and Ironclads. But the Ironclad does have a docking collar. Yeah, I remember, if I remember correctly, I know there's one on this side. I thought, isn't there one on each side? Am I not remembering right? I thought it had a docking collar. I thought it had a docking collar on the opposite side from where the command module is. John Chavez says there was a podcast where somebody told a story where a guy fired a burst of warning shots from a Mark 19. Yeah. What was that? Warning shots from a Mark 19? The docking collar's blast door looks great. It looks like a vault door. Yeah, it's super cool. It definitely has that very solid looking feel. Breaching charges, breaching tools when, CIG? If someone detects my command module, can they trace it back to the main hull? Are there any identifiers or signature relationships between the command module and the main hull? This is not something currently supported, but one we want to look into in the future. The last we saw of the breaching tools was in 2020, and Zach Priest talked about it in the FPS SCL. I think he mentioned it. I don't remember if he said it's coming this year or not. But I think he did say it is in Squadron. I'd have to go back and listen. If my command module is docked and someone boards my ship, can they detach and steal it? Yes, make sure you don't let unwelcome people aboard. Hey, King Ronan, good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. Rob Moraine, hope you are observing this Memorial Day with loved ones, and that those of yours we celebrate remain in your heart forever. We had a nice steakhouse dinner last night that I made for us. Well, my wife and I ate it. The kids were not interested in the tri-tip, but they lost my gain. So that was our Memorial Day dinner, and then tomorrow. Northern Troopers in chat, but we have our quarterly Bar Citizen Boise event at our usual spot tomorrow. So I'll get to get out of the house, get away from the kids for a few hours and hang out with the guys and have a beer and have a burger and enjoy the weekend. Think about that. You guys can't see it. Here, hold on. Is that taped up? Can I pull this down without? Hold on one sec. I'm going to show you guys something. See if you can see it. I'm going to turn on the overhead light. See if I can pick up the camera enough and turn. So if you see, as you guys are looking at it, that right there that I'm pointing at that picture, you can't see those guys, but those are two of the guys from my old squad back in my Marine days, way back when, my two best friends. And that picture right there, that picture right over there is a map of the old city of Najaf in Iraq, which is where I first saw combat back in 2004. Oh, I have to turn off that light. Back in July through September of 2004, where I had their names tattooed. I have a big old memorial tattoo down the middle of my back. I lost my team leader and my ammo man from my fire team in August of 2004 in back-to-back days. Amongst others in that battle and other battles, but that one was definitely the hardest. So that's who they're part of a pretty long list of people that I remember. And Memorial Day is a very important holiday to me. And I remember it for the reasons that we're supposed to. Yeah. It's always kind of hard, especially when it falls later in the month, because my birthday is actually next Saturday as well. And so oftentimes Memorial Day will coincide or nearly coincide with my birthday. And so it gets a little somber, and so I always try to do something to, like not take my mind off it, but, make it a little bit more of a happy thing, think about think about them and their memory in a happy and positive light. But yeah, Memorial Day is a very important in my household. I try to explain it to the kids; they're not ready yet, but they I've got pictures of my guys on the shelves over there, and I've had my sons ask, "Who's that, Daddy?" Well, how do I explain this to you? Yep. Yeah, yeah, my battalion got hit pretty hard my first deployment. We got off pretty easy my second deployment in comparison. Um, and then my company bore uh, bore not quite the lion's share of our casualties from the battalion, just because we got started off in the Battle of the Najaf at the very beginning before the rest of the battalion arrived to reinforce us. So yeah. So yeah, let's keep going. Refueling improvements and new contracts. Refueling is like the only thing that's new that works reliably for me. Or sorry, the getting refueled by an NPC, the refueling beacon. I haven't refueled anyone other than using the R&R stuff. Pardon me. What improvements and updates have the team made to the refueling mechanics in Alpha 4.8? So the system has been significantly simplified. Fuel nozzles no longer take damage, and flow speeds are adjustable through item customization. Fuel pods remain closed by default and must be opened manually, then automatically closed once the fueling process is complete, just like on your car. The refueling process is automated. As long as a fuel pod of the appropriate fuel is opened, the process will start and end automatically once the receiving player confirms their purchase. The base flow speed is now defined by the nozzle, while the different fuel pods add a modifier to it. So your choice in tools affects the performance of it. Hey man, yeah, no, I'm not. I learned a long time ago, King Ronan, that it's far better and very important to talk about it to a certain extent. I know a lot of guys that kept it all in, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to share their thoughts or their feelings on it, just kept it bottled up. Don't do it. It's not good for you. But I mean, like, it's Memorial Day weekend. I shared with you guys, obviously not going to go into details or anything, but that's my story. But like, look below, look below you. I've got my PTSD among other things, disability rating from the VA. I still think about those guys. I occasionally still, had the dreams and stuff, and um, but like, this is what works for me. Hanging out with you guys, like, I always joke, but it's legit. Like, you guys are my therapists. Getting to talk about games and nerd culture with you guys, getting to do the podcast, grouping together and going to play Star Citizen. Like, this is how I, my how I take care of my mental health. Besides, good diet, regular exercise, and trying to get good sleep when I can. Yeah, and so that's part of why I do this. Not only is it fun, um, going over SC stats. Yeah, not only is it fun for me, but like this is finding something that you love and sharing with other people. It's it's just as important as it is to not hold things in like that. And I don't want to talk about how they died, but it's important to talk to remember them and remember their sacrifice. So I'll prescribe you one cartridge of Polaris torpedoes and a week off of work. Hey, Blizzrad, there's one of my other mods. The question is, how many torpedoes are in a cartridge? Like, and like, how big is that torpedo rack gonna be? Because we watched that clip from Squadron 42 where you can see in the background the rack of missiles and whatever size those were. Imagine how big that rack is going to be when it's size 9, size 10, size 12 torpedoes like the ones on the Javelin. Holy shit. Um it like how big do we think the torpedoes are on the Odin? Because Star Jump Grim is convinced that there's torpedo launchers on the. I think the nose is where it's pointing at them, and I'm with him. I agree. I think they look like it. It looks like it has torpedo tubes straight out of like a giant submarine. You know, David Dwayne Taylor, '07, fair winds and following seas, my friend. I want 8 torps per rack in it to make a loud ping, proper clip style like a Garand. I really want a Garand someday. I've got a beautiful Springfield 1903 in the gun cabinet right over there. It was my great grandfather's from World War One. It was in pretty rough shape, but I had it restored and placed into a World War II era stock. Um, it looks good, and that thing's a tack driver. Oh man. Um, so yeah, I have had a lot of people complain that the gameplay for refueling is gone and it's just based off equipment. I don't think that's going to stay that way. I think that they reworked it in order to make sure that it works and get the base functionality into it. I think we're back at a different level of tier 0 of refueling, giving it a new foundation to start from, and that they will then have it evolve like they did for mining. And that there will still be interaction, but we'll just have to wait and see. He spoke of aspirations of joining the FFL and being an operator. FFL, what's FFL? Oh, French Foreign Legion. Gotcha. That's a super interesting organization. Talk about history. Huh. Danger, but you've never been charged for NPC refueling. Mine got charged, but it worked. The whole experience worked flawlessly. Um, Docking has also been updated. Motherfuckers. Um, how does that change the experience for refueling pilots connecting to other vessels? The docking request can now be sent by both the fuel giver and the fuel receiver. When docking is accepted and the ships get close enough to each other, auto docking is always initiated. Here, the receiver will dock onto the fuel giver. So The docking improvements were supposed to improve docking for ship to station docking. Instead, it broke completely. Does not work. So that is one of the things I really hope they get fixed in the near future, because the ship to ship docking, I think what they tried to do is unify the process so it made it easier to maintain and get working. And I think that borked the ship to station docking while making the ship to ship docking work reliably. And so they've got more work to do. Um, but yeah. What types of refueling contracts can players expect at launch, and are there any prerequisites for accessing them? There will be an introductory contract where a new faction offers players their first refueling job. This is immediately available with no reputation requirements. Generally, refueling will involve supporting NPC ships. However, depending on the star system, there is a chance of piracy. So I know people have been getting ambushed and stuff, so that's pretty cool and interesting. Some of the higher ranking contracts might require players to ensure they have protection. Don't be a fool, wrap your tool. Because the French Foreign Legion is badass, Danger. Those guys are hard freaking core. I think of Secondhand Lions. I don't remember that. Can players take on multiple refueling contracts simultaneously, or is it one job at a time? Players can accept multiple refueling contracts simultaneously after completing the introductory contract. Can refueling contracts be tackled as a group, or are they designed as solo contracts? Yes, there will be contracts that have more than one ship to refuel. That'll be interesting to see. The other thing I need to test and see if it works, and if you guys have tried it in chat, let me know. But I want to see, can I call for refueling for my Idris? Does that work? Or is it only small ships? I don't know, it seems like you get your ass shot with no Air Force to call. The French have air power. It's like triple canopy, but less money. How does payment work for refueling contracts, and what factors influence what players walk away with? Players will be paid a set rate for the fuel by the NPC they're refueling. Upon successfully completing the contract, the United Wayfarers Club will provide an additional completion payment. Had a Marine in my TACP unit. They don't like to get DoorDash, if you catch my drift. Oh, you essential ASA, you got their character fuel. Awesome. Refueling Idris variant, instead of a hangar, it's a massive fuel tank. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is like, can I just take all the fuel that they've got and will it partially refuel me? Because I mean, the fuel tank for the Carrack has got to be pretty big too. You know, like, movie about the old dudes that were rich and salesmen kept trying to sell them stuff. I think I've seen it. I just don't recall it. Alpha 4.8 introduces refueling beacons. Can you walk us through how they work? Currently, the process is that when a player activates a refueling beacon, an NPC ship will arrive, quote a price, and provide fuel once accepted. To trigger a beacon, you must be in the pilot seat and have no active crime stat. Note that if you are in active combat when the NPC ship arrives, it will leave without initiating the refueling process. It would be really cool if they had them come over on a comms call, be like, "Oh shit, you're getting shot at. Fuck this. I'm out." You know, a funny wild line to go with it. Player-to-player beacons will be available in the future. Please give those soon. What does a career in refueling look like for players who want to specialize? As organized fleet gameplay continues to develop, we anticipate scenarios in which multiple ships need refueling simultaneously, including massive capital ships that require significant fuel reserves. Refueling specialization will become increasingly valuable as fleet operations expand and pilots look to stay in the fight longer without returning to a station. There we go. There we go. We were just talking about this earlier. Refueling contracts will offer a variety of ships to service alongside new equipment to outfit your own, giving you more ways to approach the role. And finally, when player-to-player beacons come online, you'll be able to respond directly to urgent refueling requests from stranded pilots, becoming a true lifeline across the verse. Ultiflex Novian crossbow. Look how many questions they have for the freaking Novian. Okay. What role does the crossbow fill in Star Citizen's FPS arsenal? The Novian crossbow fills a niche no other FPS weapon in the verse currently occupies. It's quiet, hits incredibly hard, and is surprisingly lightweight for the damage it delivers. The sway profile is best in class, meaning you can bring it up fast and land shots on targets who think they have the drop on you. It rewards skill and precision in a way that feels totally unique. Is there a lore reason for a crossbow existing in the Star Citizen universe? It's cool. Frontier settlers and hunters alike have kept crossbows in their arsenals for centuries thanks to their ability to swiftly and precisely take down big game without alerting the rest of the herd. When special force operatives began to bring crossbows along on covert strikes for similar reasons, Ultiflex decided to make its own take on the classic weapon with modern materials and design that was as suitable for infiltrating enemy strongholds as it was stalking prey through the forest. How can players obtain the crossbow? Is it craftable, lootable, or purchasable? Multiple variants of the crossbow can be unlocked for crafting via a blueprint available through tactical strike groups or found through various loot pools across the verse. For players who took part in the Shroud of the Avatar promotion, how do they claim the crossbow? If you took part in the Shroud of the Avatar promotion, a special variant of the Novian crossbow is waiting for you. Find out how to claim it on Spectrum, and there's a link right here. What can players expect from the crossbow in terms of range and damage output? Yeah, Danger Hobo. If your unit has a if a dude in your unit has a crossbow, try not to get that guy as your roommate. Absolute psycho. Yep. The crossbow currently has the highest damage alpha of any stocked FPS weapon and is capable of one-shotting players wearing heavy helmets in its current iteration. Yeah, essentially, I want blueprints to be lootable. You find a pad on a person, you find a pad, in a location, you pick it up, you find it in a crate. But the other thing I really want is I want you to be able to you use your hacking tool to hack into a computer at a location and then be able to download blueprints, if you're able to do the hacking correctly and get access to one. Maybe you find a blueprint, maybe you find information, for data running, but if you find a blueprint, being able to download it. But then I also want that to go into how you equip your hacking tool. Do you carry more oh gosh, what do they call them in Cyberpunk? Help me out. Cyber psychosis is what happens to you in Cyberpunk, but it's the um anyway, the being able to how you equip your hacking tool, determine, okay, well, I've got more of the offensive hacking things, but it leaves me less space for data storage. And so, okay, I hacked into the computer and I'm doing hacking for offensive stuff, but then you find loot, but you have to pick and choose which data to take because you only have so much data storage because you didn't bring you loaded it with lots of different offensive hacks and defensive hacks in order to be able to more successfully open doors and trick systems and such. Yeah, well, and to be able to trade them, or get them from PvP, be able to buy them in stores and stuff, all the different ways to be able to get them. However, this is subject to change as we continue balancing. The trade-off is that it also carries the harshest projectile drop and lowest projectile speed of any stocked FPS weapon. So expect a fun mix of aiming ahead of your target and hitting them in exactly the right place. How does the crossbow hold up across different combat scenarios, for example, at close, mid, or long range? Ultiflex built this weapon to live up to its name, and it shows. The crossbow's versatility speaks for itself. At long range, it rewards players who can read projectile drop and speed, while at close quarters, its best-in-class hipfire makes it formidable when things get tight. In the right hands, no range is off limits. Damn, now I need to go rewatch Edge Runners. Wasn't worth the second play, I thought. Oh, are you talking about Cyberpunk? I haven't gotten back into it. I really should one of these days, but it's the time and how much do I have available. Does the crossbow have a headshot or precision damage mechanic, and how does accuracy factor into its effectiveness? Currently, a single headshot can drop another player, even if they're wearing a heavy helmet, thanks to the crossbow's high alpha damage and minimal damage drop-off. As with all stats, these are subject to ongoing tuning based on observed player usage and evolving balance needs. Beyond raw damage, what advantage does the crossbow offer over conventional weapons? I think it's better than the P6 because it keeps saying it's highest. Where'd it go? Highest damage alpha of any stocked FPS weapon. Can bolts be retrieved after... Oh, wait. Beyond raw damage, what advantage does the crossbow offer over conventional weapons? The Novian crossbow is exceptionally quiet, making it significantly harder for enemies to pinpoint where shots are coming from. It affects NPC audio perception in a similar way to a suppressor, giving you a tactical edge in stealth engagements that no other FPS weapon currently offers. On top of that, it has a best-in-class sway profile. 133 alpha to P6 100. It is better and you can run fast. Ooh. Can bolts be retrieved after firing, and what types are available? Bolts shatter on impact, so each shot is single use. Default bolts are available and can be crafted. Keep an eye on what else might be available in the future. I want an exploding bolt. Go full Rambo. Can the crossbow be used in zero gravity or EVA situations? Yes, the crossbow works in zero gravity and EVA situations. Gravity ejects projectile drops, so the heavier the gravity, the more you'll need to compensate, and the same is true in reverse. So potentially a really good weapon in EVA. All right. And the last section, the Castac Arms Plasma Grenade. What is the plasma grenade, and what niche does it fill in Star Citizen's FPS arsenal? The plasma grenade is Star Citizen's first area denial utility. Rather than dealing a single burst of damage, it creates a hazard zone that forces enemies to reposition or take sustained damage. Choke points, Willie Pete, anyone? Choke points or any situations with enemies in a contained space is where the plasma grenade truly shines. Yeah, trying to make a quick escape, you throw it back behind you and they can't follow you for a period of time. More of a firework than a weapon. Where can players get their hands on the plasma grenade? Anywhere you'd normally pick up grenades. They're well stocked across the verse, so you won't have to go far. For now. What should players know about the plasma grenade's blast radius and damage potential when deciding how to use it? The plasma grenade creates a significant hazard area that deals sustained damage to anyone caught inside it. Like all weapons, values will be tuned as the game develops, but the intent is clear. Enemies who don't move will not last long. Plan your throws accordingly. What does smart deployment of the plasma grenade look like, and how does range factor into that? As the plasma grenade detonates on contact, ooh, fun. Sticky grenade when? The key is landing it centrally to where your target is. The closer an enemy is to the center of their hazard zone, the longer it takes them to escape and the more damage they take. Get familiar with the grenade's drop and you will be placing it exactly where it needs to go. Is the plasma grenade hand thrown only, or are there other ways players might be able to deploy a plasma hazard? Can we get an in-game chuck it like I have for throwing my dog's ball? because the M68 grenade fits perfectly in a freaking chuck it. Artie's Killer Jr. is high explosive than Willie Pete on the retreat path. Yep. Mm-hmm. Is the plasma grenade hand thrown only, or are there other ways the players might be able to deploy a plasma hazard? For now, it's hand thrown. However, we have plans to expand this hazard creating gameplay as well as introduce more utility gadgets in the future. Grenade launchers? Eh? What happens when a plasma grenade detonates inside a ship? What are the risks to components and life support? Detonating a plasma grenade near ship components risks damaging them. The intention is for plasma grenades to create fire hazards inside ships, adding a dangerous new dimension to shipboard combat. That mechanic is targeted for a future update, so expect things to heat up. But all right, that is it for the Alpha 4.8 new features and content Q&A. Let's go ahead and switch screens real quick. I'll close these tabs and then we'll get into our last segment about teleportation in Star Citizen. Oh, I have the wrong window up. Oh well. What was that one? That one. That one. That one. That
Yeah,
one.
the resource.
Oh. See, that's 4315. Sorry, bright white. 3343. Pull up the right timestamp. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, that's not right. 3343, right? 3343, not 3443. Okay. All right, let's switch screens and we will get into the last segment, our Spectrum Pulse on teleportation and Star Citizen. I'm calling it Beam Me Up Citizen. Instead of Beam Citizen. But dad joke. Anybody? Bueller? All right. Let's go ahead and make this big. So this is from the Star Citizen Live Q&A, vehicle gameplay, design, and balance from May 8th. Timestamp is 3343. You guys probably all heard it. So let's go ahead. We're going to make this big. We're going to listen to this statement. We'll probably replay a few sections of it to make sure we get all the proper context.
Yeah, and the social tools and stuff, it also just takes forever trying to crew these things. You know, right now we've got the Idris out there, and everything, but finding enough people and getting your positions and stuff.
But even on that.
And we've been doing this all week. So I know how hard it is to get a group together, get them onto your big capital ship, get them organized, and then go do missions and stuff. You know, there's a lot of unnecessary friction in the game right now. And so a lot of this is going to be premature, but you know, even after we get to an appropriate baseline. Yeah, when it wasn't even a big group. I mean, last night we had 4 people. On Wednesday night we had 8. Monday we had 5, you know. But, you know, especially like if people are coming from different parts of the verse, if they haven't moved ahead of time, you know, like I can put the information in the post, be like, hey, we're going to meet, if you can go to Levski, and then we'll meet, you know, 100, you know, mega mommies away from Levski, rendezvous on my Idris or something like that. You know, it just, it takes time no matter what. And so we gotta listen to this with an open mind, but we also have to listen to it with a critical mind.
We have like some like improvements already in the works. That
Like what?
the teleport. I don't know if we should talk about that though.
This is the show to talk about it, my friend.
So we have right now, it's not signed off yet. So they are like, because we have to fit this work into the theme of Star Citizen, and it's.
We have to fit it in the theme of Star Citizen. So think about it like, you know, how they made regeneration fit into the theme of Death of a Spaceman. And not take away from the fact that your character can still die. They want you to be able to die, but they want you to not have to like restart your character every time your character would essentially die, but still leave a lot of room in for medical gameplay and rescue and all that. So they have to fit it into the theme of Star Citizen. And so that's why I don't think a lot of people's reactions to this are appropriate, because they're taking these ideas that are totally not within the theme of Star Citizen at all and be like, oh, this is what it, you know, it could be like this. I'm like, why would it be like that? Well, they said teleport. Is that within the theme of Star Citizen? Is this wild idea that you just came up with in the theme of Star Citizen? You know, tell me how that fits within how Star Citizen works and how they want distance and the logistics and choice to matter. So
Like if I phrase it now the way that I will phrase it, it's, you understand why it is really hard to put it into the framing of what we sell as Star Citizen.
So he's telling us right now, he's prefacing saying, hey, the way I'm going to phrase it right now, you know, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand how we are making this work within the theme of Star Citizen. Because he can't tell us about it. It's not signed off. He can't give us any details. But you know, he's going to go on to tell us that they think they have an idea of how to make it work within the Star Citizen universe, how this works. You know, how does it fit in the lore? How does it fit within the systems? How does it make it so you're not just cheating your way through the game and doing fast travel all over the place, and you know, not having to even use ships and get around and deal with, you know, because a lot of the money sinks, you know, and you know, effort sinks are in the use of your ship in order to get around and do different things.
Teleport to party leader, where we want to allow players to, in certain situations, be able to quick travel to your party group or your party.
In certain situations, be able to quick travel to your party leader, party group, party hangar. Certain situations, or even certain instances? Huh?
Hangar, and then be able to go on a mission. So we want to reduce the time for you to gather dramatically with this feature. Yeah. But it's a bit challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging. At first glance, it seems against the ethos of Star Citizen.
Correct.
So, and that's why he's saying it's not a signed-off feature. It's a.
At first glance, it seems like it's not, you know, it's against the ethos of Star Citizen. So they recognize this, you know, but they think they have a way where it's, you know, the way they implement it is not against the ethos of Star Citizen. Because if we just had magical teleportation where you could teleport across the verse, that would be against the ethos of Star Citizen, which is why I don't think it being like that is any way remotely within the realm of possibility. But we're going to look at a couple of ways where CIG has already talked about fast travel or something like it, you know, in different methods in order to be able to move around the verse. And that's older stuff. And so we're going to, you know, eventually they're going to tell us more about it and everything. But if it's this important to them when they're not even really talking about it, to say, no, we want it to fit within the ethos of Star Citizen, we're not going to break away from that. You know, that they are being cognizant of it. It isn't going to be this wild-eyed thing out of left field that doesn't make sense within our universe.
You've heard me say it. We have the same conversations here that you guys have out there just 3 months earlier, and
here we are.
Probably just as contentious, to be honest. But we have to explore those things, even if we never do it, even if a teleport feature never comes into Star Citizen. It may not. guys. We still have to discuss it.
Yeah.
We have to discuss it. We have to explore it. We have to build a prototype. We have to try it. We have to try anything that can make the process of getting into the game and playing the game more enjoyable, more effective, has to be considered. That has to be a major priority, especially as we go towards 1.0. As you go towards 1.0, that priority becomes more and more important. Making the game accessible, making it possible for people to get in and do the things that they want to do.
So that's a big part of it right there, is on the way to 1.0 and making the game accessible. Because all of us, everybody here plays Star Citizen. A lot of people, have been playing for a long time. I'm a veteran original backer, really long time. And people have always said, "Oh, Star Citizen is all about the ships." No, it is not. It is all about the ships to a lot of the current backer community. The wider gaming community is not going to be all about the ships. The wider gaming community that comes to Star Citizen and wants to play this game is not going to be all about the ships, and that they're not going to be all about the ship-based gameplay. Why do you think we are getting planets with thousands of locations? And that's not even including the space-based locations. Think about one of our planetary systems in Stanton, a planet, Hurston and its moons, Microtech and its moons. We are literally talking about many thousands of locations within one planetary system. Why? Because there's far more people who are interested in first-person content than there are people who are interested in the flying around in my spaceship, I'm a space nerd content. That's how CIG makes the game accessible. And so they need to have ways to make it so the wider gaming community can access the game and do that content where like, oh, I don't want to learn how to fly a spaceship or dogfight. That's not my thing. But, I want to go do these FPS missions. I want to be, a ground miner or do hand salvage or go, all this sort of stuff where, maybe you fly a ship just for your mode of transport, but you don't do any of the ship related gameplay like mining or salvaging or combat. But when you have dynamic server meshing and shards of tens of thousands of people, if not more, and planetary systems with thousands upon thousands of locations on them, it's the shift in the volume of content becomes much more ground-based versus space-based. Now, obviously, like there's still going to be tons of space-based content, space-based POI, but space-based POI that are for FPS, flying around in space in your spaceship, going to these POIs with your spaceship and stuff. But it makes the game, it makes the content more weighted to people who are more traditional gamers than people who want to play a traditional space sim where you spend all your time in your ship. Even though it is a space sim in that you are, living a simulated life in space, at the 1.0 and beyond phase, the ratio of the population of people who are like us, who are really into the spaceships versus the people who are really into the FPS, the first person, I say FPS, but first person content that you'll find at the various locations is going to shift. And CIG, in order to fund the project, does have to make the game more accessible to that group of people. And part of that is like, well, if I don't want to fly a ship, or want to fly a ship as little as possible, how do I get around in the verse? How do I get to go do this instance content that's the, municipal works, in these various landing zones, all these different POI and such. There you go, Northern Trooper, nailed it on the head. One of many things. Oh yeah, TWO. It's absolutely. They are watching. The community team is watching our reactions. They may not be watching this podcast, but they listen to Space Tomato's reaction, which I love. Keenan. I love Space Tomato. I've been on his show many times. He and I have been friends and talked offline for years. I've watched like every minute of his video content for nearly a decade now. But he had a very visceral reaction to hearing this because, it was the very rare occasion where he didn't take every piece of contextual information that they're giving us right here, and he just reacted to it because it was something that was so, like they said, it at first glance, at first hearing, it does sound against the ethos of Star Citizen, but they're putting an emphasis on making sure it works within the ethos of Star Citizen. They say teleport to party leader, but they also talk about quick travel. And there are ways to do that that don't ruin the ethos of Star Citizen, but then make the game more accessible, not only to people who are more interested in FPS content, but for, Space Dad, maybe I don't want to fly around the universe all the dang time. Maybe, hey, my buddies are 3 systems over and I just want to do the FPS um, instant content. Well, then does it matter if I flew there or not? If I pay money to do the quick travel, does it matter if I flew there or not? Does that change anything for the ethos of Star Citizen? It doesn't. I'm just quick traveling to go, or faster traveling to go to a location to do FPS content, and you make it so it costs money and it's still a sync, and there's other limitations to it, and Bob's your uncle. It's fine. It's no big deal. You leave the instance and you go back to the location you were at before. It's fine. No big deal. Yeah, no one is going to be, and I think that's the context of this is people are thinking that we're just going to be able to teleport anywhere into the PU or something like that. Oh, your party leader, sets up an ambush and it's just one ship, but then everybody teleports in on top of them. That is in no way, shape, or form relevant to the ethos of Star Citizen. Would never happen. CIG would never remotely consider that, and it's silly to even think about that. But again, that's the reaction because people don't listen to this 5 times over and go over each individual sentence with a fine-tooth comb in order to set their expectations and critically think their way through this, and then go and look at what CIG has said in the past about this sort of thing. Because I mean, like I talked about with the, if it's not in the PU, if it's not a PU location, maybe you just fast travel from station to station and then you get picked up by your buddy, okay, well, I paid money, I just went faster. And it doesn't, it costs you the same amount of money than, that it would cost for maybe fuel, or maybe it's a little bit more cost effective, but you don't get to bring your ship and, only a limited amount of stuff you bring on your gear. If you, maybe for, we'll get into that more, but with agent smithing, okay, cool. You agent smith into an NPC squatty and you get their gear and their character, not your gear and your character, and you don't get the physical rewards instantly. Those have to be transported back or something like that. There's a delay, and you have to pay the money to get transported, and it scales based off how far away you are. Nothing is lost. The only thing that's gained is you being able to play the game with your friends and do the content, but again, it would behoove you if you just planned ahead and flew there, because then you get to bring all your stuff with you, and you're a little bit more prepared. You're not having to use an Agent Smith NPC character. There's so many different levers that CIG can pull and make this work, and so that the syncs are still in there for SC. Yeah, Star Wars Galaxies had shuttle transports flying to all the major spaceports and local shuttles between cities on the planets and moons. That works perfect for SC. Exactly. We're going to get into that, Mitchell 19K. You nailed it on the head. So let's finish the quote.
So there may be some things here and there that are like, well, that makes it less like a space sim. Sure, but it makes it more like a fun game that more people can play. So
it's one of the
right there, less like a space sim, because you're not forced into doing all the space simmy things if you don't want to, but you still need to earn money to get around the verse and go do these things, and you still need to arrange to get around the verse. And so you're not doing the space simmy part of flying a spaceship, but you're still living and breathing in the verse and doing things. Like not everybody drives a car, not everybody flies a plane, not everybody owns a freaking boat. you pay for a fucking plane ticket rather than flying your own plane to New York, or a train ticket, or instead of flying to Salt Lake, I'm gonna drive. The it's believable. It makes sense.
Lots of people complain about lots of things, but one of the common ones is just the time it takes for you and your friends to go do something in Star Citizen, and we share that pain as well. So not everyone has 2 or 3 hours to play the game. Some people might only have an hour. You don't want to spend half an hour, 45 minutes of that time getting everyone together. Some people do. Not everyone does.
It's more. It's more.
And then spend 15 minutes quantum traveling somewhere.
Yeah. What do you want to say, Torsten?
It's a bit more than half an hour.
He's being kind. We recognize some of the challenges, and I think if anything can always be taken away from these shows, it's an acknowledgement that we recognize those challenges and that those conversations that happen out there are happening here, and that the people here are doing their best to reduce those things and make them better. I mean, I was just in a meeting, gosh, last week with Ian and Aaron and Sandy talking about the tutorial, and what we can do to improve that, because you never rest. Yes, we have to make new stuff. We have to make new stuff. New things to do, absolutely. But we also cannot forget that this needs to be a playable and enjoyable experience through and through. And there are quality of life fixes. There are older systems that can be updated, that need to be updated to help us. And then there are interesting ideas that at least have to be explored, like the teleport to party leader and stuff.
And maybe it's positive me speaking now, but I think we have a good idea of how we can make it fit for Star Citizen. And I think you will still, like, the way that is being discussed is, you will have advantages still if you do the travel by yourself, but we are very, very aware that not everyone has 3 hours for a gameplay session. So we want to tailor to those, and happy to talk about it once we are signed off on that, but
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, so he says it right there. There will be advantages to doing the travel by yourself. They say in certain situations you'll be able to do this. Not every situation. There's going to be plenty of gameplay out in the void of the PU, and plenty of locations that won't be accessible in this way. But and there will be, probably multiple ways in which to engage with fast travel to either teleport to party leader, fast travel to a different location, but it won't be something that you can have at every location at any given time, just in certain instances, and you'll have advantages, again, like we talked about. If you fly and bring your ship, you can bring all your stuff with you. You can bring everything you loot back with you. But if you fast travel, if I drive my truck to Sacramento, I can bring everything I want and need in my truck, a whole truck bed and then some. But if I fly in a plane, I get to bring one carry-on, and maybe one bag, or if I decide to bring even more stuff, I have to pay more money. But the plane will get me there faster. But driving my truck, back before gas got more expensive, I might be able to get there cheaper on my truck if I drive it myself. But if I pay for a plane ride, well, the plane's a lot bigger than my truck. It can go a whole lot faster. There you go. It's fucking fast travel with pros and cons in real life. But because it's a game, you gamify it, and the only thing you're gaining is more of your time, but you're still spending money. You still have limitations based off that choice. I can drive my truck anywhere. I can't take a plane, a chartered aircraft anywhere. I have to go to an airport, and then either, get a ride. Hello. So let's look at a few of these things that they've talked about. We're going to start with agent smithing, because people seem to be under the impression, and maybe there's even more recent information. They haven't talked about it in years. But last I was aware, we literally had this discussion. Now add kids to the situation headed to Disneyland. No. Nope. Mm-mm. Next time I'm going to Disneyland and doing the Star Wars experience, I'm going by myself. Fuck them. I think the Marine Corps was the last time I wore shorts to work. Bro got caught out. Yeah, TWO, the barrier to entry to this game will drive a lot of people away before they even give it a chance. Time being a huge factor. And yeah, if you've got people who don't want to do the space sim thing, but want to try out the game because they see the FPS content or anything else that you can do in first person, because it is a first person game first and foremost, then you've driven them away for no reason. If you can get them to play the game and either rely on, whatever mode of fast travel, whatever modes of fast travel they come up with, as well as getting rides from their friends, then now you've gotten somebody in the game who will play, who will buy stuff, you know, and they're not being locked out simply because they don't want to fly a spaceship or don't want to have to always bum a ride from a friend. So we're going to look at the Persistent Universe Game Ideas Forum. So this is, right? Yeah, this was at the town hall thing. There's like multiple panels. It was like several hours long. If you haven't watched these and maybe you're going on a long drive or a road trip or something like that, I highly recommend you listen to them and take the time to listen to them, because when people talk about how the game has changed and it's nothing like what they originally pitched, I'm like, you're full of shit. This is from 2015, and they're talking about stuff that they've been talking about since 2013, 2012, 2014 in these like 4 hours long town hall things that they did. And the majority of these things have not only, stayed within the idea of Star Citizen, whether they've been made it in the game or not, but they've built upon, a lot of them they've been built upon. There's very few things where they've been like, no, we're just not going to do that. If anything, like this is the whole, well, people talk about scope creep. It's because they're doing so much of this and then so much more, not less. M. Lansing, yeah, on YouTube, place with ships like the E1, we could have player commercial pilots. Yep, that's what these tabs are for. We're going to start with agent smithing, and then we're going to talk about personal transport. Let's see, make sure I have the right timestamp for this. I'll put this over here. 15:20.
So yes, I think yes.
Next.
All right. So yes, I think yes. There you go.
What's going on around the system?
Next.
All right. So yes, I think yes. There you go.
Beautiful.
Okay, well, my question is 90% answered from the prior gentleman's question, but regarding the shared NPCs that you have on multiple accounts, there's been terms thrown around on the forum called agent smithing, where people will be able to come and assist you when you're in.
So they're having this town hall, and a lot of this stuff, when they say they've been talked about in the forum, it's because the developers, including CR and many others, were on the old RSI forums, were talking about these things and what their ideas and plans were. And so that's what they're referencing back to. And now they're talking about it in 2015, but these are things that they were talking about before this.
NPCs are not quite up to snuff, and explaining the mechanic of when a fellow friend or org mate can agent smith one of your NPCs to give you better control in certain parts and aspects of fighting. And if you do decide to do that, make sure you make the cool graphic animation going blah, 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 as he forms in.
Wow. I love that. That sounds great.
Actually, I think CryEngine already has that as a shader, don't they?
Yeah,
I think.
You could do it. It's an interesting concept.
No, we do. That's the plan. The plan is that your friends can take over. I mean, that's what we mentioned.
But just take it over from an NPC, or a hired guy.
You can
like on
only
demand.
Take over. You can only take over the name. So the design was that if you've had, say, 5 game packages, you can make every 5 of them. There's 5 characters basically, and any one of those characters, like you can play. The other ones could be an NPC on your ship, or your friends could come in and control. Basically, you go online and say, "Hey, I'm flying my constellation. Can you get in and take care of, Han Solo and the turret, I want you to control them because my NPC Han Solo sucks.
Exactly.
He shoots early, is what I hear.
So the only thing I would say is I don't know about the Matrix effect when it goes from one face to another way, but the rest of it's all part of the plan.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Next.
I'm going to pick.
So, agent smithing was part of the plan in the beginning, way back when. But you're not teleporting your character to replace that NPC character. You are assuming control of that NPC character. So that in itself is already a restriction, a disadvantage in that, okay, if your character has developed these skills, because we know we're going to be getting skills. If your character has this equipment, well, you can't bring that with you. You are assuming control of a character with certain skills, and other limitations. You are using their gear and what gear they have access to, whatever your buddy has stored on his ship, not your gear that you're necessarily used to using. Maybe you've got high-end crafted gear, and now you're getting, basic store-bought shit because it's an NPC. But he talked about this where it's just your NPC crew, or it's just the NPC crew that are your additional game packages. Well, obviously that wouldn't work if you're wanting to teleport to an instance to join your party leader. Well, they could we know that we're going to be able to hire NPC crew, but what if they made it for instance content where if you, instead of just having an NPC crew, there was NPC squaddies that were just there as part of that mission. And so a player that doesn't have a group to play with can attempt this difficult, this mission, and they've got NPC squaddies that aren't as good as a player, but they can help along. So maybe they could get it done, to a certain extent. But it could be like, okay, I'm here. If you want to join me, you can, Agent Smith into this squaddie, but you have to use their gear. Well, now you're playing with your friends, and they can, maybe they get, certain rewards. Maybe they get part of the payout. Maybe they get some rep and everything like that. Maybe they can then, have the loot sent back to their character, wherever they are, and you receive it over a period of time. But, as an interim, as a feature in addition to, having NPC crew, which they've said we're not going to be getting until after 1.0. And maybe this is something that they're talking about that's after 1.0. Maybe it isn't for, leading up to 1.0. But, I think that that's a totally viable option that's been done in other games where you have NPC squaddies where you're doing, instance content and they're fighting alongside you. And if you have more friends, then you've got friends and NPC squaddies. But if you could have your friends Agent Smith into an NPC squaddie, they've got limitations, but you get to get together and play. And now you can actually do that content in the 1 hour that you have in the evening, rather than having to save it for the weekend because you've got to spend 30 minutes to an hour, at a different time to go across the two systems to get there. And then you're just wasting time and not playing the game. You're just doing the quantum travel, the space sim stuff that maybe you don't want to do that day or at all. Yeah. We know we're going to have NPC crew, and so, but they've said that isn't coming until 1.0, but well, okay, maybe you don't have NPC crew for some of this instance content. You just have an NPC squaddie that you didn't hire. You're not paying them. Maybe they're just part of that faction that you're doing the mission for, and players can Agent Smith into them. Boom, nothing is lost. You get to play more. Maybe you have to pay to Agent Smith into them or something like that. Who knows how that could work. But already not being able to use your character with your gear, you're having to use stock stuff, and that's already a limitation. That's already a disadvantage versus if you flew there yourself and brought your stuff, your good crafted gear, all your supplies and everything. Pros and cons, but you're losing nothing from the game by being able to do, instance FPS content by Agent Smithing to it with your friends. Especially if you have to pay in some way to do it. So that way you're still incurring the cost that you would have had you actually traveled there. Danger will have a specific set of skills as a set of skills, a septuagenarian Irish movie star. Where, yeah. So this is the most recent reference I can find to agent smithing. I can't find anything else in terms of Spectrum posts that counters any of this. So if you find something or hear someone else talk about something, whether it's in a Discord or social media or a content creator or whatever, please hit me up in my Discord, DM me wherever, come in my chat and let me know. I'd love to see it. But this is what I could find.
See.
And so, see, it always starts at the wrong timestamp. Let me pull up the right timestamp. So this is a Star Citizen reverse the verse live. So this is what they would do. They would do a reverse the verse after, several days or a week after doing an around the verse. And so he's going to recap the details after having he had a discussion with, oh gosh, Dreamy Eyes, who left. He talked to them at an around the verse about agent smithing, but they wanted to clear some misconceptions based off of what was said, because it got misinterpreted, by it got misinterpreted by Bro Dreamy Eyes. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. And people took that as saying we're not doing agent smithing, when actually they are. And we'll see what he says here in a second. We're going to start at 1 minute and 3 seconds.
Week. What a lucky guy. Then on Monday, we saw another episode of our weekly question and answer series, Calling All Devs. And in the variety of topics we touched on this week, we addressed the old chestnut referred to colloquially as agent smithing. And because RTV rolled 1 on initiative and has to go on last after everything else each week, I have an update for you after this week's episode. So, in the early days of the project, Chris talked about a potential mechanic that would allow players to drop in and out of Star Citizen wherever their friends were playing. Now, this was intended to foster a short-term, immediate gameplay experience with your friends in times where you potentially had a very limited availability. Now,
the exact thing, practically verbatim, that they were just talking about in SCL. The exact thing. And this, what Jared is talking about, is in 2018, where he's reiterating an idea that came from 2014. And it is 2026 now, when they're finally circling around back to it. But it's the same exact concept that they're talking about way back when, that they reiterated here. They're bringing it back up in the SCL. And this is one aspect of it.
At the time, we likened this feature to Agent Smith from the Matrix movies, where he would pop in where another person was and in control. Now, over the years, as new backers joined the project and the term agent smithing was tossed around in casual conversation, we noticed a second narrative emerge regarding this feature, one featuring a more literal interpretation of the agent smith metaphor, where you, as your character, warped in and ultimately replaced the NPC with yourself, complete with your look and capabilities, just like Agent Smith did in the movie.
Okay, so what they're talking about is what people took the literal meaning of agent smithing, where Agent Smith would come in and replace the person with himself, his capabilities, what he was wearing, all that sort of stuff. That was the misnomer, is people thought that you would be able to say, okay, here's an NPC crew. I'm going to swap that NPC crew out with myself, essentially teleporting me, not assuming control of that NPC crew.
Movies. Now, this second interpretation came up again very recently in a conversation with Kirk, where he commented on the upcoming additions to the grouping system and Spectrum integration, where you can see what your friend was doing online, where they were in the persistent universe, and he said you could just push a button and join them. Now, we began to see a whole bunch of questions about whether this comment meant that you could effectively teleport to another player's location. It did not. Kirk just meant that we'd like to give you a button to launch your game, from the Spectrum's friends list. It's still something on our wish list. Now, when the question of agent smithing came up 2 weeks later,
it did not mean that you could teleport to your friend's location in the game.
In this week's Calling All Devs, everything Star Citizen Live game director Todd Pappy said was 100% correct. We have no intention at this time to allow teleporting of any kind of your player character, either through the Spectrum group integration we plan, or in the more literal interpretation of agent smithing, where your character would overwrite that of an existing NPC. Now, where I messed up was in failing to ask Todd the follow-up question regarding Chris's original intention behind the mechanic, which was just simply controlling a friend's NPC. So, all week after talking to Todd and Chris both at length, while such a mechanic isn't anticipated anytime soon, or even on the roadmap for the next year, we do still want to pursue allowing players to assume control of their friends' NPC crew members when desired. Now, this would be done without access to any of the advantages your player characters would have in money, ships, or other resources. And any gains made while you were in control of the NPC would remain those of the NPC crew member. It's still a system that needs quite a bit of development before I'm going to have anything more to tell you in a definitive sense. But I did want to take the time to set the record straight regarding our intentions to pursue such a feature in the future. So agent smithing is still on, and we can all go back to theory crafting the advantages and disadvantages, the potential exploits and lightly implementations of such a feature now. And when there's more to share about it, which is again, not on the roadmap for at least the next 12 months, we'll let you know. So what else happened this week?
For at least the next 12 months.
Thursday saw the
You mean 12 months plus an additional 84 months? So what he just said right there is they have no intention to let you teleport your character in order to replace an NPC crew member. You would be able to assume control of an NPC, and like you said, the restriction being that you don't have the advantages of having your stuff, and anything that the NPC crew member gets, they get to keep. Well, who knows how that would work if you inhabited an NPC squatty. Maybe you would get some of the rewards. Maybe the reward is being able to do the content with your friend and being able to play, and you don't get much of the reward. The reward is being able to play but not progress. I don't know. Again, he just said go back to theory crafting it. That's something they'd have to design, but they don't. Per Chris fucking Roberts, he doesn't want teleportation. Literal teleportation, literal, teleporting your player character around, agent smithing where is where you assume control of a character that's already there. Now, what the issue is that, when they talked, they said, Torsten said teleport to party leader, but then after that he said fast travel. And so, if it's teleport to party leader, if you're teleporting to party leader in instance content, you didn't teleport, you fast traveled, because when you get out of that instance content, you go back to where you came from. So you don't get to get out of the instance content and then remain where you were. That it's just a form of fast travel to be able to use the instant content, whereas they could also have, in addition to that, additional forms of fast travel like personnel transport, where you could either have offline transport, which would allow you to bring your character and more stuff. Who knows how that would go. You pay someone to drive your car, DD for you, drive your ship in order to get you where to go. Pay to hop on a Genesis Starliner or an E1. We'll get into that. But CIG has multiple options to make this work, so that way players can group up together faster, because they were aware of this issue way back when they were first concepting the idea of the game, and it's coming back around now. And their thoughts on it have not changed. They don't want to change the ethos of Star Citizen. They're thinking about how it fits into Star Citizen, just like they were back then, just like Jared just clarified based off of what CR and Todd Pappy and all them wanted and had talked about before. And so it doesn't seem like anything new has come along or changed. We're not looking at some major retcon, or addition to the lore of Star Citizen and how things work in the verse of Star Citizen at all. So that's what we have, the most recent information about agent smithing, and it's simply just assuming control of an NPC, and they can expand. I think it's very likely that they'll expand that not only from NPC crew, but to something in the form of like NPC squaddies for certain content. Imagine Siege of Orison, and there's NPC squaddies of the Crusader Security, or a merc group, and you can assume control of them. You can maybe pay a fee to assume control of them or something like that. See how that works, and you've got all the advantages and disadvantages that come with that. But you get to do the content rather than having to fly all the way from Nyx or Terra in order to do it, and spend that amount of time not doing the content. Okay, so let's talk about another option where we can have a form of fast travel where nothing is lost and nothing regarding the ethos of Star Citizen is compromised.
Showed.
Of course, the wrong timestamp, even though I haven't moved these tabs at all. Give me one sec. The Citizen Control 954, the Star is My Destination presentation, Star Citizen 1.0, October 2024, timestamp 1937.
Club and more. Next, you have one of the oldest unions in the UEE, the Interstellar Transport Guild. This will be the go-to place for everybody looking to make their fortune hauling and trading. Some of the factions that many of you already work for now, such as Ling Family Hauling, Redwind, and FTL. And we're going to be such as Ling Family Hauling, Redwind, and FTL.
So, Interstellar Transport Guild. We already do recover cargo missions. We already do deliver cargo. We already can do trading. We've got the courier delivery missions, passenger or a transporter. We don't have any of this gameplay, but this is a profession for 1.0. But we don't have passenger delivery with Guide Star shuttles. We don't have vehicle delivery where we transport vehicles on behalf of Ling Family Hauling or Kovalex, and we don't have data running with FTL. But this is planned for 1.0. And so let's take a look at the passenger delivery, passenger transport. So we know about Meridian Transit. Meridian Transit is this is from the Galactopedia, is a passenger, obviously they're not intending for them to be in at 1.0, but, we'll have Guide Star shuttles, and then we'll have more organizations that you can work for across the verse as they fill it out. But so Meridian Transport. Meridian is a passenger and commercial transportation company based on Crusader. It manages a large fleet of Crusader Industries Genesis-class ships, on scheduled flights around the UEE. Meridian has also been licensed for limited operations between the UEE and Xi'an Empire, with a regular route to Ryla 4. Trooper going to drive me around. He's pretty good, but I don't think I can afford that. Yeah. And this is just one in the Galactopedia. We also, if you go to the Galactic Guide for Castra, and you read about Cascom and Sherman, the space station in orbit above Sherman, in the old lore, and who knows what it is now, but was owned by Crusader, because Crusader themselves has essentially their own space airline for transporting passengers, and the station up in orbit, low Earth orbit station above Sherman on Cascom is one of their stops, and they used to actually essentially own it at like owning an airport. Now, whether that makes it through to the game, it doesn't matter, just that they were already thinking about this long ago. There's also the Q&A from the Genesis Starliner. Obviously, this is very old, but it seems to still ring very true. Hey, Maverick07, good to see you. How you doing? Thanks for stopping by, buddy. So, the Q&A for the Genesis Starliner is multiple parts. Part 1. So we'll read the preamble too. Greetings, citizens. Part of our commitment to providing information during concept sales is doing follow-up community Q&A sessions. All future concept sales will include at least one post-launch Q&A post. They're still doing that. This week for the Genesis Starliner concept sale, we're answering questions backers have posted to this thread. A special thank you to designer Randy Vasquez for answering your Starliner questions. Will you mainly transfer NPCs or players? You will chart your own course here. We envision 3 types of Starliners in the finished universe. Those run by players to transport NPCs, player-run businesses. Those run by NPCs to transport both NPCs and players who need to go from place to place without a ship. And then those run by players who adapt them for their own purposes, which is a long way of saying that you'll be able to either use your Starliner to run passenger missions, or you'll be able to chart your own course with other players like any other ship in the verse. So, NPCs transporting NPCs and players, essentially the routes that you could hop on as a player would also have NPC passengers on board, and those NPC passengers would essentially be NPCs that Quanta, or whatever they're called now. I don't know if they're still Quanta. It's called Quanta now that it's not Quantum, it's Star Sim. Sims. Is that trademarked? I don't know. But that's how they would get around, the verse in order to, go do different jobs and move to different locations and have the population shift and such. Just found another crossbow in Rockbreaker, so not ultra rare. Yeah, no, I've heard that they're definitely they pop up in the loot pools at Rockbreaker. I haven't heard of anyone picking them up at other locations yet, though. That's the only location I've heard about it being in the loot pool. But you'll be able to transport players and NPCs. The NPCs will be able to transport NPCs and players. And then part 2 of the Q&A. Will there be NPC-controlled scheduled galactic carriers that you could work for? Yes, this is an easy way to generate missions for pilots who might not be able to afford their own Starliner. Meridian Transit, introduced on Around the Verse, is one of these companies, and we envision they're hiring pilots who have earned their commercial transport license in the finished universe. Reputation. You draw a salary with a modifier based on performance rather than earning credits from individual NPC tickets. And of course, continued poor performance would mean you wouldn't be invited back. So you'll be able to fly. The idea was that you could fly a Starliner for Meridian Transit rather than use your own. And you're not incurring wear and tear, but you just get paid. And you don't have to own the ship, but you just get to fly it around. Or NPCs fly you around. But you're taking, or you do it with your Starliner. But that there's going to be multiple options for moving NPCs and players around the verse. And I'm not going to read through this, but there is a whole Q&A, and Maverick knows this is something that Space Tomato likes to bring up, because this is where they talked about the Mixmaster, which probably will never make it into the game. But they did a whole Q&A about the passenger transport career. And we know that it is going to be, in 1.0, delivering passengers is going to be, passenger delivery is going to be part of, the transport profession within the game. At 1.0, will it have this level of depth? I doubt it. Will it have some form of depth? Yes, absolutely. Will we get the Genesis Starliner before 1.0? Who knows? I kind of doubt it, but we'll see. But they already have the A1 and the C1 Crusader built. They've done all the concept work in the white box for the E1. They just need the gameplay. And so ostensibly, among other ships that you can do passenger transport for, essentially anything with seats, you'll be able to transport NPCs and do these jobs. And NPCs will also work for Guide Star shuttles and transport players. And if you go to any spaceport in the game, there is a commercial flights area. I was just at the ones for at New Babbage and Lorville today, and there is you go there and it forks in the road, and you can go left and it will say the flights domestic transport, so you can hop on a flight and go to a different location on the same planet, or you can hop on a flight and go to a different planet or a different moon or a different space station. That's fast travel. You don't have to use your own ship. You fast travel. You get around the verse a little bit quicker, just like if you were flying a plane versus driving your own car or whatever. You still have to pay a good chunk of money. There's, pros and cons. You don't get to bring all your stuff with you. You don't get to bring your ship. You get to bring what's on your back and maybe a small, little bit of, maybe you go to the inventory kiosk and you can move one SCU worth of stuff, or maybe, a half an SCU. Who knows? The personal storage lockers are like 2/3 or 3/4 of an SCU. Maybe you get that much space. I don't know. But that would allow you to get around the verse. Maybe you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm at Lorville. My buddy's at Levski, and he wants to do, do content out in Nix or something like that. Okay, well, you hop on a shuttle, you go to him and you hop on his ship and away you go. And, or you use this in order to fast travel to a station, or you can travel directly to your friend's hangar. Because the other detail that people don't notice is if you go to these commercial terminal areas and you look at the signs and there's numbers and it's like 3 numbers and A, 3 letters and B. Those letters and numbers match up with there's a section in your hangar. If you go in your hangar, there's an area where there's a personnel entrance and a heavy cargo entrance. And the terminal numbers line up with those. So that way, if a Meridian Transit transports cargo and people, well, the people would come out of those personnel entrances, and any cargo that they're getting loaded onto the plane would get loaded from those terminal entrances, essentially onto a ship. If you're doing a passenger transport, those NPCs could just walk out of the door, walk up the steps, walk up the ramp onto your ship, and take a freaking seat. If you're a player, you go through the gate and you go and hop on a seat, and then maybe it's a fade to black or something. Who knows how they would end up doing it? I don't know, but essentially make it so you fast travel from the commercial terminal to your destination. You hop on an NPC transport, and Bob's your uncle. You're there, and you're ready to go. Yeah, Maverick 69. Carry on limit and have to pay 10,000 for additional luggage. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe if you want to bring additional luggage, you can do it, for a fee. No Mixmaster Boo. You get warm cruise and reclaimed water, depending on who you fly with. If you're flying in a Cutlass Steel, warm cruise and reclaimed water. If you're on a Genesis Starliner or on a C1, then you get a Mixmaster or some other nice beverages. A really nice hot torpedo burrito. I don't know. But and for the local flights, you hop on a Valkyrie and you go for a ride. Or a Cutlass Steel, or maybe you do take an E1, a bottle of rust, yeah. But CIG has obviously already thought about these things, whether because I don't think it will be a single source solution. I don't think we're only going to get agent smithing and not be able to quick travel via NPC airlines, whatever you want to call it. I think there'll be a variety of situations, and you pick the one that works for your situation. Hey, I want to, I want to Agent Smith, and then you just, get to use what they're using, but you go right into that character. Or, oh, I'll fast travel to this station and you can pick me up, and that way it'll only take a few minutes to group up versus a few seconds. But then you get to bring your character and your gear, and some supplies or whatever, and then you can you can quick travel back and bring that stuff back with you. And so it takes a little bit longer. It takes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to group up, but it doesn't take 30 minutes to an hour. But it also doesn't take seconds. You fade to black and you open your eyes and you're Joe Blow NPC, who's wearing store-bought gear. And that's just 2 options that are easy to look at and think about because CIG has already talked about them. And this is just the citations that I could find quickly offhand, things that I knew of just off the top of my head. There's a lot more. And so, I'd love to hear, like, we're going to wrap up the show here, but like, if you're watching this later on YouTube, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you like these ideas, if you have other ideas of how CIG could implement it, either in contrast or in addition to these. If you want to talk about it more in the Discord, hop in my Discord. The invite's always open. Would love to see you. You can come join me, when we do game nights, and we can talk about it, in voice. I'd love to hear your thoughts then too. And as always, if you want to see these citations as well as the ones from, the links for the other things that we went over tonight, it'll be in the show notes when I post this onto YouTube. Should be up tomorrow it'll be tomorrow afternoon my time. And so if you miss a section, you can go back and watch it. There'll be timestamps as well. Maverick says, do you think that those original plans and designs will hold up to the current push to get things into game and deliver 1.0 baseline features? Oh, I think that they won't get all of that, and I think it will have changed and morphed, but I think like the bones of it are still there. Like, I don't think that they're changing tack in order to get NPC crew in before 1.0. I think that we will have certain situations where they could have NPC squaddies that you could either squad up with or your friend could assume. I think that's an example of how they could make ancient smithing work, leading up to 1.0 before NPC crew, where you could still play with your friends with pros and cons. But I think that because we are getting the passenger delivery profession in game, I think that, where we transport passengers, I think we will also get to be passengers on the lead up to 1.0. And that is another way that where we could get around the verse much more efficiently. But again, like Jared said, back in 2018 with pros and cons, you don't have all your stuff, you don't have your ship, but you got to the station and I can get picked up by your buddy, and rather than like, oh, okay, well, sorry, I wasn't able to log on when I got home, and QT over to here and travel across the go from Pyro to Nix, and so I'll be there in 20 minutes. Oh, well, if I just take the passenger transport, now you just have to meet at that station. We can be together in 5 minutes instead, or maybe even less. Maybe you're already at that station. It's a much more efficient use of time, but it still doesn't get you out of the sinks that are a big part of what makes Star Citizen. And so it's not space sim, but you are still simulating your life in space. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, risky biscuits. Every major landing zone, and adding that kind of stuff to stations is nothing. It's just adding a module at the end of a hallway, and the hangars are the exact same, and so you could literally make it so like you could make it so you could arrive at the station. If your buddy, your party is if your party is already at that station, you've got a buddy who's already there in his hangar, you could just, instead of walking out into the station and having to go to the lobby, you just walk out the passenger entrance into his hangar and you're ready to go. Like, that is a very efficient use of time, but it still costs you money and resources, and it still has restrictions just like it would in real life. It just is a better use of our time, and it removes unnecessary barriers and friction to anybody, but especially to people who aren't into the space sim aspect of the space game, which is going the majority of the gaming community. We are in the minority. But CIG wants this game to appeal to a lot of people, and that means appealing to the more first-person, more first-person gamers, and so maybe your org ends up having a population where 1 in 10 people, regularly fly ships, and the rest of the people are along for the ride, which is good. More people coming in, more people joining the orgs, more people to play means you have more turret gunners, more crew on your hangar deck. You've got more people to load into your drop ship and drive your vehicles, to do first-person, industry content, if that's what you're into. Yeah, risky biscuits, absolutely. Yeah, large fees. Even if I wanted to right now, it would cost me less in gas to drive to Sacramento than, to visit my family than it would to fly. But it would take me a 9-hour drive versus, just over a 1 hour flight minus, the time, the time in the spaceport, the airport, which again, gamify it. The time doesn't matter, because if everybody has access to it, but you have the restrictions. Okay, the people who decided to fly it don't have those same restrictions, but they did give up the time. Well, if you have the time, don't deal with the restrictions, and again, this is only in certain instances, certain situations where this would be available. You're not going to be able to do this to any location in the universe, but we have space stations all over the place, but it's still from the space stations. It's a flight to where your friends might be somewhere else. And I guarantee, I would bet money that quantum travel is going to get slower and it's going to get more expensive when we have Genesis planets and moons and Starkitect locations and all that. And we have all the refueling in and working and such. And we have it so that way they are achieving their goal of having a much higher density of content within a planetary system. So that way they can slow us down in terms of getting around the verse. So that way you're not picking up and moving all the time. Your org shouldn't be spread across 3 systems. Your org should be centralized to one system, if not one planetary system, and you guys migrate as needed. But if you are spread out a little bit, at least you can get people to where you need them to be in a more efficient manner. Again, with costs and restrictions. Zero to Midland. Wait, I thought I could call my entire org to me if I was losing a PvP fight that I started. CAG promised. Yeah, exactly. I literally heard multiple things like that, and I'm like, why would you think that's within the realm of possibility? That makes no sense, given the statements that were said. Here, or any other number of sources. Yeah. So let's go ahead and switch screens, and we'll go back to the main chatting screen. We'll close it out for the night. We'll find someone to raid. We've still got over 60 people hanging out in chat. Big thanks to, oh gosh, somebody taco. Who was it that raided us? Brought us like 3 or 4 dozen people. It looks like a lot of you guys stuck around, and we probably got some more people coming in later. Really appreciate all you guys being here and being a part of the podcast and the show. If you missed anything, there will be plenty of opportunity to catch up on it on my YouTube and talk about it in my Discord. And so always looking to continue the conversation with you guys and the rest of the community. All right, so that's all I have for episode 103 of the Pathfinders podcast. I hope you found it informative. Again, the show notes will be in the description for the podcast on my YouTube. I'll also upload it with the timestamps for the different segments. So if you watch part of it but not all of it, you can find what you're looking for much more easily. And again, the Discord invite is always open. I think I need to update the links on my Twitch page, and I'll check the one on my YouTube page to make sure that they are open invites. They're supposed to be. But if you get the link to my Discord, you can click join. It's always an open invite, and you just have to agree to the rules. And we're always we're very welcoming, lots of very knowledgeable and friendly people. We talk about all sorts of stuff besides Star Citizen. I'm pretty consistently grouping up and as well as streaming during the week in the evenings my time. So would love for you to join me in the crew. But yeah, so I won't be streaming tomorrow night, but I intend to stream again on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, trying to keep up with that schedule. But yeah, thanks again so much. Let's go ahead and find someone to raid. Yeah, 07, Mitchell, good to see you again, buddy. All right, let's see. Who is around? Anyone that I follow? Ooh, Chachi is doing VR. Real KG. Let's see. We're gonna raid Chachi because Chachi has 17 viewers and Real KG has 52. And Chachi's doing some VR stuff. He's got a pretty cool setup. It's always interesting to take a look at that. So let's send Chachi Sanchez some love. You guys have a great night. '07, happy Memorial Day. Pour one out for the homies. And I will see you again soon. All right, let's start that raid. Okay. All right, 3, 2, 1, rating now. Cheers, '07. Good night.